This is the MeatEater podcast coming at you shirtless, severely bug-bitten, and in my case, underwearless.
We hunt the MeatEater podcast.
You can't predict anything.
The MeatEater podcast is brought to you by First Light. Whether you're checking trail cams, hanging deer stands, or scouting for elk, First Light has performance apparel to support every hunter in every environment. Check it out at firstlight.com. FIRSTLITE.com. All right, everybody. We're joined today by John Stallone and Charles Whitman from HOWL for Wildlife, which is an organization you hear more and more about as they have been heavily involved in some of the fights to preserve our hunting rights around the country. Welcome, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, sir. Yeah, thank you.
I know that I think my first introduction to you guys was Giannis was one of the first people I heard mentioning it, and he would maybe I had heard of you, but during trivia long time ago, I think Giannis made a donation to HOWL for Wildlife, and so he brought you guys onto our radar. Then increasingly, you guys have come up in conversations and stuff you're working on around the Colorado hunting ban vote coming up and some other issues. So I'm looking forward to spend some time with you guys talking about some things that have happened, some things that might happen in the efforts to preserve everyone's hunting rights. So we will get to that shortly. Thanks for coming. MeatEater TV YouTube channel. Now, not to be confused with the YouTube channel where you watch our podcast network, which now has its own channel. Tell them, Corinne.
All right. So we've got a new podcast network, MeatEater Podcast Network YouTube channel, which is distinct from the MeatEater TV YouTube channel. And the MeatEater Podcast Network channel on YouTube is going to be the place where you can listen to and, importantly, watch all of the network podcasts. And if you are watching us right now, that means you're already on that channel. But please make sure you welcome. Welcome. Please make sure you give a subscribe as well, so that when these pop up, you'll get those alerts.
If on the regular channel, on the regular MeatEater TV YouTube channel, go right now and check out Whitetail EDU. So in this world, you got ED, not great,
Which gets a lot of ads.
You got EDC, which is your pocket knife. I remember when that didn't exist.
Yeah, that was just
it was a pocket knife.
Yeah.
Now it's an EDC, and then you got EDU, meaning Whitetail EDU on the MeatEater YouTube channel. It's with Mark Kenyon, Tony Peterson. It's a short video series running through September to get you in the mindset for the fall hunting season and provide all kind of tips and tricks for getting after whitetails. And man, those guys are great too on the whitetail front. I grew up hunting whitetails. We would just kind of put a tree stand in the same
where
tree.
You could see a lot of stuff.
Where you could, out on the point. So you just watched deer that were 500. No, you couldn't see that far.
Tony was telling me
and then left before I ever got it really figured out. But these guys got it figured out.
Their number one request is people will send them on X pins and say, "Where would you kill a deer? Where should I set up?"
Do they reply?
Their reply is, "Listen and figure it out for yourself."
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. The whole teach a man to fish.
Yep.
Dude, after Tony and I went down and last fall and hunted some public land down in Oklahoma, and watching that dude kind of put that whole thing together, like just basically scouting on the fly and then making determinations.
He's taking in all kinds of information you might not be.
No, it's like Sixth Sense stuff, dude.
Yeah.
It's Sixth Sense stuff.
Like you didn't sit there and be like, "Oh, I could do this."
No.
It probably becomes Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
If you're constantly doing something a certain way and like keeping track of certain things, it probably becomes like an instinct after.
Time of the field.
What whitetails are doing when they're doing.
Yeah.
You know, like you can take someone and show them But you might not notice, but look, that's a deer trail, right?
Right.
And they'll eventually figure that out. But sort of his like, I don't know. I think around 4:00,
Feels bucky.
he's gonna
in
come down
here.
there and stand right there and eat an acorn.
And then he's right.
It's incredible, man. He's good on those dudes are good on whitetails. It's fun to see. We also have a new live streaming podcast called MeatEater Radio Live. Starts in a few days. So you want to check that out. It's the field report, all from around the country. Live correspondents from around the country telling you what they're up to and what's going on. What's the news in their area? What's the hot bite in their area? What kind of tattoos did they get that they might later regret? Whatever. Field reports from around the country. Alaska to Florida, New York to Hawaii, and all points in between. You'll be hearing from some of the hardest hitting outdoorsmen out there as they give you live reports on what's going on in their area and in their lives.
But also co-anchored by a combination of
All kind of co-anchors.
you, Cal, Brody, Randall, Spencer, Yanni.
Yep.
So a nice peppering of different personalities from across our network, and you will be able to watch it live on the podcast.
But then you can watch it later too. If
Right.
you want to watch it live, watch it live.
Yep.
Turks and Caicos repeals the law that has all the Americans locked up. Or they walked the law back a little bit that has all the Americans locked up. If you hadn't heard about this, we've covered this and interviewed some of the people and covered it on our website, covered it on podcasts. Turks and Caicos passed this really strict gun law, which had a minimum, was it 12? I think 12 years minimum jail time
for ammo as
for gun. Yeah, for possession, firearm possession. And the way they wrote it would roll up even if you had a shell and no gun to shoot it from. And they caught, once this law was passed and started being strictly enforced, they caught 5 American tourists, some or all of them, coming out of the country, leaving Turks and Caicos with a stray round or a stray few rounds of ammo left over from hunting season in their backpack. Jailed all these guys. A congressional delegation went down there. There was a guy from Pennsylvania, so I know like Fetterman from Pennsylvania went down there. There was a guy from Oklahoma, so a congressman from Oklahoma, on and on. Congressmen from all these different states went down there to try to put some heat on Turks and Caicos to give the guys back. Because clearly in this situation, it's like, first, they don't have a firearm to match the ammo. Second, they're leaving. They've already gotten, somehow they got into the country.
They're like doing you a favor by taking ammo out of the country.
Yeah, and it'd be like some hunting ammo. They got into the country, stayed the whole time, and now they're leaving, and you catch them on the way out the door with a bullet or two in their bag. And so this U.S. congressional delegation goes down there and says, come on, right? And earlier I had wondered, like, what would be the leverage that the U.S. would apply to Turks and Caicos? And one thing that I realized in some reading I did this morning, leverage they could apply is the State Department issues a warning, like, don't go to, warning businesses, don't do business in Turks and Caicos because they're a little overzealous, and warn U.S. citizens, hey, be careful going to Turks and Caicos, which can really, when you have a country whose economy is based on tourism, so apparently that's the pressure they put on. And meanwhile, they've been slowly letting these guys out. They held one guy in jail for 100 days. He got out on time served. Another guy came home because he's got bad health problems. One of the 2 guys we interviewed is home. Another one's going to find out today or tomorrow. And meanwhile, they walk back the wording on the legislation. Still, check your bags, dude. I'm always yelling at my little boy because he's super careless with 22 shells. Put the things back in the box, man.
I got detained for a little while in Anchorage.
I got
410 shells.
Yeah.
I got rolled up in Mexico.
Yeah, Mexico. I'd rather get detained in Anchorage.
That was
than
scary
Mexico.
because you were in
So what happened there?
So I was coming back across the border,
Mm-hmm.
and I had shotgun shells underneath the back seat of my truck because I had gotten coyote hunting like a week before we went down.
Well, it's also just where shotgun shells live.
Exactly. And, they were just doing a routine inspection, checking for if I was bringing fruit or whatever. And they found these 2 shells and they pulled me and my family aside.
The U.S. side or the Mexico side?
Mexico side.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So I was kind of, crapping my pants a little bit because I didn't know I was there with my kids and my wife.
Yeah.
Luckily, I had my whole family, my parents were with us, my uncles were with us. We were like down there for a whole thing. So eventually they just took the shells, threw them out and let us go. But it was a little hairy for a little bit there.
I want to know like what percentage of government spending goes into stuff like this when we all bitch about government overspending. It's like, well, we had to send a congressional delegation because some folks on vacation had a couple of shells in their pocket. I'd just like to know. But I guarantee they're like, thank God for the U.S. government.
They probably worked in a little vacation while they were down there.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what's totally hilarious? I don't want to say the name, but there's a subject. We've been wanting to have been wanting to do another episode on wild horses, the wild horse, wild burro subject. So I was telling Corinne, I was like, I really want to find like a guest who's got deep history, deep personal on the ground history with the issue of wild horses, the Wild Horse and Burro Protection Act, unintended consequences of the Wild Horse and Burro Protection Act, the kind of insanity of shipping these horses to Oklahoma and paying farmers to raise them until they die of old age because there's no other outlet for them, all that. And I start eyeballing this guy that seems great on the subject. And I said to Corinne, why don't you find this guy and see if he'll come on the show? And last night, Corinne sends me a article, and like we'll share articles all the time. And I'm reading the article thinking that there's like a hunting and fishing angle to it. And it's an article about this guy who's embezzling money from a university by just weird little petty things. Like he would
like expense reports.
He would take a company car, but then fill out an expense report as though he took his own car.
Right.
Or he would have his daughters getting married somewhere, so he would book a big house for the family to be at the wedding, but then he would schedule a meeting
and attend like
and then white out the details and white out certain details on the invoice and submit the invoice for reimbursement.
He's got a shitload of markers and staples at his house.
Yeah, and
stuff like that.
And I'm reading the article thinking that I'm going to get to a part where he's
like,
using a company truck for hunting and fishing. Like I don't know, I'm waiting for the hunting and fishing angle. And I text her, I'm like, I don't see the relevance of what you just sent me. And she goes, that's the guy that you've been telling me to get on the show. So I was like, well, I guess we're back to the drawing board.
I think we know some people. We know some people. We'll talk about it later. We've done some actions on wild horses, feral horses, and all that. And
in Arizona specifically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So if you are here's the catch. You cannot be, God bless you. This is not meaning any disrespect. You can't be an agency person. You can be a former agency person, but you can't be a current agency person because it's the kind of issue where if you're an agency person, you're going to be restricted on what you can say and you're going to be reluctant to share your own opinions because of retribution. Former agency person or other professional, a person who's tenured somewhere and can just talk about the issue. And you could be free to say, I'll tell you the crazy part about this, or here's the part that everybody thinks is crazy, but it's not so crazy. And just a realist, someone who really sees all sides of it, understands arguments on both ends. Cal's looking at me like he wants the job.
At the same time, I want somebody from the horse sausage industry.
The horse sausage.
Yeah.
The glue factory.
Come on down from the glue factory.
Yeah. No agency people and I guess
good people from
we're
Elmer's.
open to a glue factory person, but you got to be a well-rounded glue factory person. So there's a call to action. The pronunciation on the Roosevelt family deepens.
Does.
You ready for this? Guy wrote in. Who's this person's name?
It's
Her.
she.
Michelle.
What's DVM and MS mean?
Vet.
Oh, a vet wrote in.
They're getting paid for this somehow.
I actually need to call her about this pigeon situation. It's a little late now.
We have
but I
a
want to
vet
know
in the
that
family. We have Davina Spencer.
Well, that's who we called. But we didn't call her. We called her. We kind of jumped the gun.
Yeah.
And already burned some. You know, we called her a couple times about non-issues. And then when we had an issue, I was like, are we really going to call her again about these pigeons?
She might appreciate it.
I think a little bit, I gathered from her tonality was a little bit of like, why did you go get them?
Right. Why'd you involve yourself?
This all seems very preventable.
I do need to talk to this person, though. Veterinary microbiology. Snort's got some gut health issues that we need to figure out.
No,
so.
call her up. But here's what she has to say Here's what she has to say right now.
Preventative.
Michelle. She says, some interesting history surrounding the Roosevelt family and pronunciation of the name. I've always jumped back and forth and had been intellectually too lazy to figure out what it actually was. So I would sometimes do Ruse and sometimes do Rose. And I was corrected that when speaking of Theodore, it's Roosevelt, and he articulated it very clearly in letters, and that's how he likes it to be. But here it is. Hear this. My husband got on a presidential biography kick. And around the time our son was born, he was working through Edmund Morris's 3-part biography of Theodore Roosevelt. This became my son's first bedtime story, as he loved to read aloud for him every night and even threw in an attempt at an old-timey accent. Phil, do your old-timey accent from people in movies, from the early movie days.
Oh, well, hey there, chap. How you doing? You've got a nice-looking mouth. I'd like to kiss it.
And then do the, what's the big idea here? And so you want to be a star.
Hey, what's the big idea here? You want to be a star, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's Phil's specialty.
It reminds me of last night.
Yeah.
Last night. Where was I at? Oh, somewhere in this trilogy was an explanation of the history of the family, which was intertwined with the differences in pronunciation. There are historically 2 different groups of Roosevelts, the Hyde Park clan and the Oyster Bay clan, who are each based from 2 different sons of, the hell's that name? Klaus?
Claes?
I think it's
Claes
Martensen
von
Rosen.
Yeah, I think it's Martzen.
Boy, that sounds like a name you'd have a lot of money.
The important part is von Rosenbelt, I think there.
But I like that whole name because it's like, you know, there's a thing I've become interested in is like, there's certain names you'll see and you know they're rich.
Yeah, we hit on that the other day.
I hit on it all the
What was
time.
that guy's name? I can't remember.
Braxton.
No.
Saxton,
yeah.
Dustin?
Yeah. It's like they know, like, rich people. Like, I wonder if it works.
Like he's a cast.
If I name my kid a rich name, if I was like, I'm going to name him Thurston.
So he will become rich?
Yeah. Will money just flow his way?
I think so.
Life might
Because if you name your kid Dave, I mean, who knows? Could go anyway. But if I named him Thurston von Rinella the Ninth, does money just show up?
Likely.
He's going to be getting calls for sure.
Klaus Martensen von Roosevelt, who arrived in New Amsterdam around 1640. Meaning that family showed up in Manhattan in 1640. That's a good way to make money, actually. I think the money followed the name.
Yeah.
Theodore Roosevelt was part of the Oyster Bay branch, who pronounced the name Roosevelt. Franklin D. Roosevelt was part of the Hyde Park clan, who pronounced the name Roosevelt. So technically, the pronunciation indicates which branch of the family you are referring to.
That's very interesting.
That's great. I had no idea.
Great.
So
Thanks,
that confuses
Michelle.
things even more. So now when you're talking about the Great Depression, and you're going to talk about Franklin Delano, you need to go like, hey, what was it again? Well, that's right. Roosevelt. And if you're talking about the Trust Busters and the early conservation movement and Theodore, you got to go, what was it again? That's right.
Roosevelt elk, though.
Well,
we now know, right?
I think we should say cows deer are deer that reside in Arizona, New Mexico, whereas coos deer are the ones we hunt in Mexico. Two different plants.
I would beg to argue with that.
Are you a cows or a coos man?
I'm a coos man. And everybody that I know says coos, and I live in Arizona, so.
When I wanted to know, I checked with Chris Denham, who's written it and said it more than anybody on the planet, and he said, till the day I die.
Yeah, exactly. There's nobody that says cows deer, unless you're pretentious.
There's one non-pretentious person that says it, and it's Heffelfinger, but he's a stickler. He's a stickler. We had spelled one of our things online. We had spelled, what state did we spell? We spelled Nevada wrong. And Jim texted me. He says, there are 2 ways to pronounce Nevada, but 1 way to spell it. This guy wrote in on nuclear and RFK Jr. So we recently interviewed RFK Jr. and talked about nuclear, which I remain. I'm not convinced. I feel that we need to be leaning. I'll just say, I feel that without really knowing what I'm talking about, I feel that we need to be leaning very heavily that direction. He says, the guy writes in, I am the plant manager of a nuclear plant and need to remain anonymous due to company policy. I listen to the podcast religiously, and this week's discussion on nuclear power was upsetting. RFK made 2 points on nuclear that were stated as facts and are both completely false. I'm not looking to force an opinion on anyone, just correct some bad information. RFK stated nuclear is heavily subsidized. Not true. We do not receive the carbon credits wind and solar benefit from. I had no idea that was true. If you get into a little game of who's right, but I'm going to give this guy I'm going to trust that this guy's correct.
For this week.
He goes on, I think we should, because nuclear is carbon-free as well, but that's an opinion. We do get some recovery payment from the government for spent fuel storage, but that is not a subsidy. The money is repayment for all the money we spent on the failed Yucca Mountain government project. Without getting into the weeds too much, just for people, the Yucca Mountain project was, there was a plan. We have all kinds of nuclear waste stored in places that are not long-term storage. And for a while, there was a plan to auger a deep, deep hole in the area that's regarded to be one of the most geologically stable areas in the country and store and then lead seal the stuff into a mountain, which sounds bad until you consider that it's all somewhere already anyway. 2 primary arguments against it. One, you got to get it there. Okay, so all this stuff would then need to be transported, which some people argue would be a huge security and environmental risk to transport it. Other people say, well, you got to do something with it because it's not good where it is. The other issue is Native Americans in was Yucca Mountain, Nevada or Arizona? Sorry, I don't know this. Nevada, right?
I think so.
Type it in real quick, please.
There's definitely 2 in Arizona.
Nevada.
Okay.
Is that one in Nevada?
And I think it was the Navajo who were of the opinion, don't put that shit here on our land.
Understandable.
So there's that. 2, it's point 2. RFK was empathetic about the lack of insurance for nuclear plants.
Western Shoshone Nation.
Okay.
There you go. Sorry about that.
RFK was emphatic about the lack of insurance for nuclear plants. This is, again, completely false. Now, I got to clarify to the person writing in, he wasn't talking about a lack of insurance for nuclear plants. He's talking about the astronomically high cost of insurance for nuclear plants, meaning people think that anti-nuclear people are hippies and tie-dyes. And he said you also have to blame guys in ties on Wall Street. I don't think they wear ties on Wall Street anymore. They unbutton.
Yeah.
They unbutton the top button. He was saying the problem there is cost of insurance, meaning Wall Street guys don't want to insure. So a little bit of a squabble there on that. But again, he says this is, again, completely false. Nuclear plants are heavily insured by multiple companies.
One update, though. Because the Senate just passed a bill to support advanced nuclear deployment. So it passed, the Senate passed a bill to accelerate the deployment of nuclear energy capacity, including by speeding permitting and creating new incentives for advanced nuclear reactor technologies. And this passed 88-2.
Oh.
Do you know why Corinne's in on this? The real reason why?
Cal's Vegan Review?
No.
Oh.
She's hedging her bets on her Charles Schwab account.
I can also see what Corinne's doing on her computer.
Is she trying to manipulate the stock market?
Corinne's scrolling through the NASDAQ during this whole podcast. She's just got like graphs going up and down.
All me. I'm just gonna really manipulate it, and it's going to
Wall Street bets.
Joe Biden for signature to become law. I'm not exactly sure when that's going to be, but
the guy concludes. He even gives his first name. I'm not even read his damn first name. I'll give a hint. He has the same first name as a very popular country musician. I could go into great detail on each of these points, but in the interest of brevity, I won't. I do sense a sincere curiosity, especially of Steve, anytime nuclear comes up on the podcast. It would be great to have an expert on to speak in facts and allow listeners to decide for themselves. I love what you guys are doing. Keep up the good work. If you're sitting at home or driving in your truck wondering why we're talking about this on a show about wildlife and hunting and fishing and whatnot, I'll lay it out for you. Very, very briefly. As the country moves toward renewables, and I think we're going to retract from renewables because I do not think there's no way Biden's going to win in November. So we're going to see a retraction on renewables. But if we do push ahead on renewables, there's this conversation about how much of our public lands do we put over to renewables. And when I look as an energy novice, when I look at the huge movement, I'm struggling for words. When I look at how heavily we're spending on moving toward renewable energy, I just can't see why we're not moving heavily, aggressively into research and deployment of nuclear energy because the footprint's so small.
And hopefully, I guess that reveals my perspective, but hopefully, and it seems like potentially from certain, legislation that there's momentum behind that. And I think that there are people driving markets, all these AI investors who are actually talking to nuclear. So that might become
because
more
of the huge power needs of AI.
Exactly.
It's either we go back and double down on fossil fuels, we plaster our coastlines with wind farms and convert hundreds of thousands of acres of BLM to solar arrays and wind. I'm not trying to make it like a rock and a hard spot, but it's a little bit of a rock and a hard spot. And I can't get satisfied around the idea. I know that we had these huge crises. 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl. What's the Japan?
Fukushima.
Yeah, the tsunami that wiped out the Fukushima power plant. Like I understand all of that, but my God, do I feel like we need to be taking that stuff more seriously.
Well, how about this BS on batteries? Like the solution is coming up with bigger batteries? Like I do not believe that for a frickin' second.
Did you hear Trump lay out his concerns about big batteries?
No, but I just changed batteries at my house last night, and I'm like, here's this thing. And my place is right next to Pacific Steel and Recycling. Huge shout out to that place because it's like the most fun place I go. You can recycle anything.
They're your neighbors too.
And then you get paid for it. It's awesome. And there's a bunch of real interesting folks down there. Awesome documentary to be made. Could waste a lot of time at Pacific Steel. You know what they don't recycle? Any type of battery.
Why not?
because it's trash. They're like, you can't recycle that.
Poisons.
But why are they always paying that? Why are they always paying that?
Well, there's people who can recycle the lead out of lead core batteries.
Oh, they don't want lithiums.
Yep, no alkaline, no double A's, triple A's.
Oh, that kind of battery. Okay.
Yep.
When you said batteries, my head immediately went to the fact that you can get money for a car battery, but that's a fraction of all batteries.
But like these lithium batteries and stuff like that is like, it's trash, man.
You don't want to get them wet either.
Or take them on an airplane.
Brody and I were laughing the other day because I was watching this clip. I kept hearing that Trump was talking a lot about shark attacks. I was like, what? So I was watching this clip and he's talking about boats, like vessels now with these huge battery-powered vessels, and he's laying out a scenario where the vessel is sinking and you have a lot of electricity in the water and you're faced with do you stay with the boat or risk shark attack by getting away from the boat? And he really had shark attacks on his mind.
Mm-hmm.
A woman had just lost a leg to a shark, maybe?
Yeah, in Florida.
And
Destin.
you can see, people in the audience were a little confused, but he was... He
was back on Sharks the other day, too.
Yeah, it's funny that he's... I'd like him to come on.
Did you catch when you
talk about sharks? What's that?
You struggled with the word nuclear?
Oh, always, my whole life.
Yeah, do you remember the Bush clips?
No.
Of
Did you have a hard time with it?
Bush number 2, yeah. There was a great series of nuclear. Nuclear. It was awesome.
That's right.
Yeah.
That was a big thing. Is this guy that wrote in, do you know where he's from? Is he perhaps from Michigan?
On the nuclear part? Oh, we probably can't say that.
Can't say, okay.
He won't even say.
I grew up right next to a Fermi nuclear power plant in Michigan.
What's his name, Luke?
I was going to say Luke.
So was I. When you said
but you gave me the country music thing.
So that was rough.
In my head.
He has to be kept quiet.
Well, how do you know his name's not Waylon?
How do I know? Yeah, no. Waylon was my second guess. Sure, yeah.
Or George.
Could have been George.
Or Tanya.
Could have been Garth.
Garth, Tanya, George.
Yeah. Tanya would be probably not Tanya.
Dolly.
Dude, that song, Delta Dawn.
Oh, dude. Love it.
Yeah, she was a teenager.
Yeah.
Oh, have you ever looked at the YouTube Grand Ole Opry?
Mm-mm.
Good stuff.
Yeah, it's great.
She almost had a big role in Jeremiah Johnson. Did you know that?
No.
She wound up having a small role in Jeremiah Johnson.
Huh.
Oh, she did have one.
Yeah. Dude, you could do, I shouldn't throw this out there because maybe someday I will. You could do a whole documentary on Jeremiah Johnson. Here's a good one for you guys. It's a Chetiquette question. Chetiquette meaning, Chester's not even here. It means it's an etiquette question, and we normally defer to Chester, who likes etiquette. But he's not even here. So I guess it's more of an etiquette question. This is a good one. I'm seeking guidance on a recent dilemma I have been troubled with. So it's not so recent anymore, but from the spring. He says, I live in a mid-Atlantic state. Here's another guy. He doesn't even want to tell a mid-Atlantic state. He doesn't even want to get down. He doesn't even want people to narrow down to what state he's in.
I think he feels a little guilty.
I live in a mid-Atlantic state with a robust turkey, uppercase T, population. This season, I hunted the woods behind my house. You always know where it's going when someone hunts the woods behind their house. I had several close encounters at the same time, but never filled my tag. 3 days after the season ended, I woke up to the barks and growls of my Labrador retriever, uppercase R. He was right to uppercase the L and wrong to uppercase the R. I looked out my bedroom window to see that the same Tom had found itself trapped inside my garden plot, which is surrounded by an 8-foot fence. I watched as the bird repeatedly tried to take flight, hit the fence, and run around the garden, tearing up my plants. My immediate thought was to grab my 12 gauge and protect my crops.
There's not really.
This is good.
Fill my tag.
Hear him out.
Yeah.
Suddenly, every segment of Chetiquette popped in my head. I felt as though I was biased in wanting a turkey in my freezer. Yeah, maybe. And that my rationale in protecting my crops may be impaired by the frustration of the prior turkey season. I don't rely on my garden for survival, but I do appreciate my homegrown veggies. I called my state's game warden dispatch several times and was told to leave a message and that someone would get back to me. The Department of Natural Resources website states homeowners are strictly prohibited from trapping and shooting wildlife outside regulated seasons unless the animal has been actively causing property damage or is an obvious threat to public health and safety. Eventually, I was able to get the garden gate open and scare the bird out, damaging even more plants.
I don't understand the eventually. I would like
the hinges were rusted shut. I don't know. He doesn't say. After a closer inspection of the garden, I wish I shot the bird on sight because he took out my onion patch
that I worked real hard on.
It's been 3 days and the game warden hasn't called. My buddies are giving me a lot of crap for not shooting the bird. My question is, would I have been right to shoot the bird? It was actively causing damage.
This is where if you're a hunter, you cannot shoot that bird. If you have a hunting license, you're not going to end up on the right side of this argument.
And we're trying to kill
I
that
have
bird.
so many questions, though. How to get in there in the first place?
Well, I've been waiting to share this. I was in the situation he's in. I didn't have a fence around my garden. When I got a fence around my garden, I mean, it wasn't a day and there was a turkey in there because the dog chased a turkey up on the roof of the house. When the turkey pitched off the roof of the house, he landed in that garden and proceeded to run all over, freaking out until we were able to get him out of the fence.
Yeah, they have trouble with fences.
I'll point out to this gentleman, the thought never occurred in my mind to kill that turkey.
He was just sorry he didn't get one.
I think that that because you were trying to kill that turkey and got duped, and then if you did kill that turkey now, you would always be suspect. Always. There would always be what am I trying to put? Suspicion.
Yeah. I
in
understand,
the neighborhood.
I understand the wanting to protect your garden. I was eyeballing a cottontail this morning that was drifting towards my garden.
And Brody's got a domestic cat giving him a lot of grief.
I do.
Oh, gross.
It
Pooping
uses
in the
his
garden.
garden as an outhouse, which infuriates Brody.
Oh, the cat?
Yep. It's like it might as well be defecating in Brody's mouth.
Yes. I tried non-lethal deterrents
sure I
like
want your
laying
tomatoes
sticks over
anymore,
the
bro.
garden, but it's not working. So gonna
it
have
might
to,
as well defecate in Brody's mouth for all the
we're gonna have
insult it
to
brings
up
to
the
Brody.
game on that cat.
Well, your kids get diseased because of that thing. I
know.
You know?
Anaplasmosis in the garden.
They're going to get toxoplasmosis.
Or yeah, not toxoplasmosis.
And then you know what they're going to do? They're going to make risky investments. This is all true. I'm not making this up.
Yeah.
They're going to get toxo. They're going to make risky investments. They're going to drive too fast. They're going to be too hot-headed and too prone to fighting.
That cat's got to go.
Yep.
It's either that or they lose all their money.
Yep.
Do you find them making risky bets with one another already?
I've noticed some weird behavior lately.
It's toxo.
Yep.
Or they become a weird cat lady,
No, that's
which
not
is
gonna
also
happen.
linked to toxo.
That's not going to happen.
Well, no. When you become a weird cat lady hoarder, toxo.
I'll keep an
When
eye
you
out
become
for
a
that.
guy that drives too fast and tries to evade arrest and makes bad bets and likes going to casinos, toxo.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna have to do some research on this.
You're like, it's getting uncomfortable. This guy's describing me to a T.
That's my problem.
Moving on. Maggie Hudlow is joining us from Wyoming.
Hello.
What's covered up by a tarp in the background? I've been dying to know.
Oh, that's our strawberry patch. We've got a little hoop house thing there. We've got another bigger vegetable garden up on the other side of the house.
Are you keeping cold out or pests out?
Well, the dogs really like to dig around in there, and it's been below freezing the last few nights, so a little bit of both.
Okay, keeping Brody's house cat out of there. So give us a
the cats
dispatch.
don't.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. We have a slight delay.
Oh,
sorry.
you're good. Yeah, sorry about that. Don't have too much trouble with cats with all the dogs running around this yard.
Maggie Hudlow is a colleague of ours here at MeatEater, a very prolific writer. You can always find her work at themeateater.com. And Maggie's going to give us a Wyoming dispatch and lay out some of the aftermath of the incident where an individual had struck a wolf with a snowmobile and then taped its mouth shut and paraded it around town in a very distasteful incident that had some far-reaching consequences. Go ahead, Maggie.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I mean, when I first heard the news, I had a couple thoughts, and it was like, what a thoughtless dumbass, like what a terrible thing to do. And also the second thought was that this is going to blow up and get just huge. And it did immediately. So kind of local repercussions that have been not necessarily as publicly newsed. There have been a lot of people, you know, connected to Cody through family, I know, that have been getting death threats. The Green River Bar where the incident happened, they've been getting, you know, threatened. Game wardens, people, small businesses in town have been getting just like hundreds of 1-star reviews by people they've never met. Just angry animal activists. And all that is done, like these strangers kind of infiltrating this really like close-knit small town. It's just made people want to side with Cody more than anything because they know him as a person and he's never, you know, threatened to kill them or their family or anything. So what's happened is this like massive polarization, and you have these animal rights activists that want something to happen and are doing it in the worst way possible. And then you have this established culture of hate against predators in Wyoming that is like already existed, but now it's had this international spotlight shown on it. And essentially right now it's like you're either on this side or you're on this side. You're either for animal rights or you're for killing wolves. And I think we need to have more conversations that meet a little bit more in the middle. Like, we need predator management in this area. Like, ranching is a huge part of this community. We also are right in the middle of migration corridors for mule deer, for antelope. We have huge elk populations. There's elk feed grounds all around us. I think predator management is important, but I think it's also really important that we look at creating legislation that makes it ethical.
Right on. Yep.
Do you can you elaborate on that last point a little bit? 'Cause I think that was some of the I think some of the frustration that happened on this issue is someone did something that was so egregious. And I'll remind people, I think this gets a little bit lost. This was hitting a wolf with a snowmobile. Mm-hmm. This is running down an animal and hitting it with a snowmobile. Okay. Yes, the individual hunts, does some hunting, but this is a snowmobile strike and taking a wounded animal, taping it up and bringing it to a bar. And I think I sensed early on a lot of frustration from outsiders looking at this issue being, how could you do that in the criminality of it was illegal possession of wildlife, which would be the same thing as if you went and caught a baby rabbit and raised it as your own. you would be guilty of the same crime, illegal possession of wildlife. So when you talk about legislation, can you comment on that? Am I going in the wrong direction on this and trying to understand what you're saying, Maggie?
No, you're good. And I think, so wolves are, considered predators, so they just don't have any sort of protections beyond that. And that's sort of the sticky thing about the situation, is that everyone wanted to see Cody prosecuted more than just that small fine. And there is nothing legally set in the state that he technically did that he can be taken to court for or fined for. And that's where the state legislation itself needs to change. But
so Maggie, are you getting at that, like, in Wyoming, wolves are not managed as, well, in most of the state, they're not managed as a game animal. So it's like open season all year long, no bag limits outside of a small area in northwestern Wyoming.
Well,
yeah, they're
in
managed
all fairness,
as
I wouldn't
predators.
call it small.
Well, not
when wolves were
I think it's 95% of the state.
Okay, sorry. I thought it was more significant. So, but just like a little background for people listening, when wolves were delisted, different states took different approaches. In Wyoming, in some respects, the delisting process was delayed by negotiations with Wyoming about what kind of management plan Wyoming wanted to do. And Wyoming really stuck to its guns and push for a management plan in which they would have an area where wolves would be managed as a game animal, and they would have an area where wolves would be managed as basically the same way that virtually all states manage coyotes.
Right. Yeah, it's vermin.
Yep.
It's listed as
non-game, whatever. The same way.
Vermin.
For coyotes, most states have, I think this is true, most states have no closed seasons on coyotes, right? And if there's a coyote molesting your livestock or whatever, you don't even need to tell anybody about it if you were to kill a coyote. So Wyoming was emphatic about arriving at in that position. And it differs from the management approach taken in Idaho and the management approach taken in Montana, where they established quota systems around the state and regulatory measures around those states. So just a difference in the approach.
Yeah, and the concept of running down wolves on a snow machine, that's something that's been happening here for a long time.
And
I was
coyotes.
called, and coyotes for sure. I was called a tree-hugging hippie growing up when I would tell my classmates I thought that was wrong or a bad thing to do. I was like, if you want to shoot them, why don't you just shoot them? Why do you got to run them until they die? I don't think that's right. And because I would say that, I was a tree-hugging hippie. But, I think you can be a sportsman and believe in, ethical predator management. And that's what I would like to see. If there's any light in this situation, that it just brings more of that.
Yeah, because I think amongst the pro-predator management crowd, even the pro-predator eradication crowd, you would see a division in getting the job done and playing with an animal.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Even if you're going to
Because
run it over, just run it over, kill it.
if you're pro,
right,
as in a professional, you're doing things quickly and efficiently and doing the job.
I don't think any hunter who says that they're a hunter wants to see a prolonged death on anything.
Right.
We pride ourselves on the fact that one shot, one kill, or inject
now,
whatever.
I'll just totally honest, my hunting mentor, he was in a time where coyote pelts were worth a ton of money. And he used to tell me stories over and over again about the success of his coyote season was based on how many snowsuits he had to replace. because instead of shooting a coyote, he'd get up alongside of him on a snowmobile and whack him on the head with a club so he didn't have to stitch up a hole.
But that's still dispatching it.
Yeah.
But it's a dead coyote.
That's still dispatching it right away. I mean,
yeah. But that
method of
dog
tick
would
is-
latch into the leg on his snowsuit, and then he'd whack it on the head.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's one of those things that you hear and you don't immediately think about what and I almost hesitate to say this, but what a level of that's a lot of coordination.
Athleticism. These are old snowmobiles too.
Maggie, I want to
go ahead.
real quick, Cal, then you can take over. I want to tell you that one of the interesting things about being alive today is it's possible to be a tree-hugging hippie and a savage redneck all at the same time. It just depends on who's...
I feel that in my core.
It depends on who's doing the looking. I think that Einstein got into that with theory of relativity. Like you say, like, well, how fast is it going? Well, it depends on where you're looking at it from. So yeah, you're a bloodthirsty redneck and a tree-hugging hippie. Welcome to the club.
Never been more clearly defined.
Yeah. Well, I've
Welcome
had
to the club.
the conversation with a bunch of ranchers over the years who make some comment about environmentalists, and I'm looking at their place, and I'm like, well, aren't you?
A lot of environment.
I'm like, you seem to be doing a lot of things good for the environment here.
One of my favorite stories from this podcast is we had a guy on years ago that worked on the nutria eradication program in Chesapeake Bay. And in order to do the nutria eradication program, they had to get all private landowners to participate. And they had one big landowner that was just a holdout. So they couldn't finish killing all the nutria. And he had a real, just kind of an
Getting along.
he had an anti-government perspective and kind of an anti-environmentalist perspective. And eventually they become friends with him. And he goes out to this guy's place and he realizes the guy just loves wildlife. And in walking around his place, he's like, look at that tree, look at this. And he looks at the federal guy. He goes, see what I'm talking about? It's a damn menagerie. And he realized, like, we're like closer than I thought. You know what I mean? Anyhow, anything else, Maggie, you want to add?
I mean, at the moment, no. I'll stick around and chime in when I see fit, but I want both sides of situations like this to just think about the best way to make change. And I feel like my mom talking to myself when I'm in like high school. Like, think about your actions, Maggie Rose. Think about how your actions impact other people, And I just wish more people were told that. Maybe they needed to be reminded. Like, don't mess with small businesses that have nothing to do with the situation. Don't give people death threats. Like, what do you think that's going to accomplish? So, yeah, think about your actions.
You're not dealing with our
There's my
group
finger
of
shake.
rational people. For the most part in that scenario.
So guys, give me the HOWL perspective on this, because it's it's a thorny one for everyone.
Mm-hmm. We got involved. I heard about it. We were at Mile High Expo in Denver. I was at dinner. I almost flipped my table over, and I'll explain why. I was just pissed off that this happened, like right now. Really, this happened in 2024 in the midst of
mountain lion bans
and all this stuff that's going on. This is going to blow up. This is going to look bad. This is really going to boost the anti-hunters in their campaign, because
he's going to be the poster
optically.
child. Cody became the poster child for what they're trying to push.
Yeah. So we created, I guess you can call it an action. It was really a sign-on letter to get as many orgs, companies, to condemn the action. right? We got about 70, which was great. I think we were the only ones that really even talk about it, like as far as a national org, which I was disappointed in. You know, we should come out in opposition to this.
Yeah, it's red hot.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, it's red hot, and we took some heat. I run the social media, so I was kind of seeing it, you know, from people that I knew, and I'm like, hey, come on, we're anti-hunters now. I mean, because we're condemning this action, like that's the level it went to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, where's this going to go? You're kind of, what are you saying? We should change legislation or whatnot? I said, no, you shouldn't be able to torture an animal. This guy could have ran the wolf over, tied it to a tree for 5 days, came back 5 days later and then killed it. It would have been fine. No penalty because he didn't transport the animal.
Oh, you
right?
mean that would have been legally permissible?
Would have been. Yeah, in that area. So in the vermin area that Maggie was talking
what's
about.
What's it called? Is it predator management zone? Is it called?
Yeah, the predator man. The other zone, which is funny, is called the trophy zone.
Which is,
so there,
let's keep
so
shooting
where
holes
there are rules, it's called the trophy zone. It's Wyoming's just it's a different place. So we got involved, and then one of the things we do is, you know, we're not from Wyoming. We're not an organization that's based in Wyoming. I reached out to organizations in Wyoming, say, hey, who's taking care of this? Does anybody care? Is anybody willing to, you know, get involved? And it was Jess Johnson with Wyoming Wildlife Federation, and she's kind of taken the lead on this. We got her back as far as what she's going to need, podcasts, support from in-state or out-of-state, support from industry partners that we have who can kind of lend the support that she's going to need, and she's working on what's going to work. Is there anything in legislation? She realizes that's really sticky because this is a situation here where it's not normal. You know what I mean? What happened?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you really legislate kind of morality?
Yeah,
really.
And how do you draw legislation around a totally individual, once in a lifetime, outlandish set of actions on one person's behalf?
Right.
You know.
So I don't know if it was. Yeah. There's some things.
There's stuff that happens.
I think it's happened before. Maybe not with this guy, but it happens. It has happened before, things like this.
Maybe not as egregious as this particular thing, but
and
things happen that shouldn't happen if you're, again, an ethical hunter.
Okay.
You know.
But what did it do? We can talk about that. So the action was terrible. And what did it do? So he became the guy who did this. I realize he has a family and all that. I don't like really saying his name. I'm just kind of talking about the incident. But Cats Aren't Trophies, who is the anti-hunting organization in Colorado that's leading the charge to ban trophy hunting, mountain lions, bobcats. His face is plastered on their website. His face is plastered on their social media. The guy was also, he's hunted lions. So they have pictures of him with lions, and they're like, this is why we need to ban this, because
we need to protect
like
them.
this.
Yeah, we need to protect them from these evil hunters. And this is, you know,
Yeah.
everybody becomes this guy automatically by association because we're all hunters, because we all engage in hunting.
Yeah.
Now we are this bloodthirsty, hate animals. We don't, you know, we willy-nilly go out there and shoot crap, and you know, like that's the picture they want to paint. You know, it's part of what they do. They deal in the eye of public perception all the time.
It was a nightmare. It's a nightmare for us. It's a nightmare for the people who are in the trenches fighting, because, man, you get a picture of something, you know how it works. I mean, you can't talk your way out of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe if you have 5 hours and you really spend it with the person and explain, you know, these things we're talking about, but we don't get that chance, right? Social media and all the anti-hunting, you know, websites or whatever. He's the poster boy, and you can see publicly how much money they're raising. It's in the millions. We talked a little bit earlier about the biker rally and that thing that happened. I think that was $132,000 or something. It's just, it's unfortunate that happened. It's unfortunate that there are some people who aren't aware of themselves, their actions. Obviously, somebody in Daniel, Wyoming, the video got out somehow. I don't know how it got out. I don't know who got a hold of it. But those things, they don't do us any good. And both morally, it was wrong. It was wrong if nobody even knew about it. It was wrong if it wasn't on video. But it was on video, and now it's a completely different story. But that kind of stuff is a big struggle. It's a big, big struggle. It doesn't help us at all. So anyway, we don't know what the strategy is going to be. We don't know what the if there is going to be legislation or whatnot. Jess is working on that. We trust her to get that ironed out. And Maggie, do you talk to Jess at all about? Yeah, you do. Okay.
Oh, sorry. I was nodding to my mom in the background.
Oh,
but yeah, I'm actually going to Jess's house this weekend.
Perfect.
So I was
fantastic.
looking forward to talking to her about this.
Yeah, so we're having a meeting with her next week. Maybe we'll invite you to that on kind of strategy on this whole thing. So maybe we'll invite you to that too. 'Cause
that
it
would be
sounds like
great.
you're right. Yeah, cool.
Do you think like addressing it more and bringing it back up has the potential to backfire, and just like keeping it like other than condemning it, right? Which is what else can you do? If you're like, if you keep raising it up to the top of the discussion, is that just helping the other side?
It's a good question. I think it depends on how we tackle it, what we say, what the results are going to be, and honestly, if we market it or not. I think it's a good thing. All right, I'll give you an example. We condemned this. We said a lot about it. I made a few videos on it. People reached out to HOWL and said, this is the first time I've ever heard hunters talk like this. First time I've heard hunters say, this was an
anti-hunter.
action. Yeah, these are anti-hunters. I think that's kind of how she was describing herself. There was a few people. She was impressed. She said, I feel like I could sit at the same table with you and at least have a conversation. The more people we reach like that, the better. Certainly. Kind of like what Steve was saying earlier, you find you have a lot more in common with people when you actually sit down and have conversations and learn about their life.
Yeah.
And that's
It's
ultimately what we're
interesting
trying to
because
do.
like it like something that's very obviously immoral and egregious, but when someone poaches an elk, you don't get the same. You know what I mean?
No, but it's illegal and they get fined. And
Sure,
they get penalized.
But it's like we don't get the same credit for condemning that action. You know what I mean? It's just
That's because we're all poachers. You didn't know that?
oh right.
Well, the reality is like hunters do have a very long legacy of regulating hunters. Right. This would be more of the same.
But it's not talked about enough. That's the problem. And
Or is it talked about all the time and it's just white noise?
it's talked about all the time between hunters. It's not going
Right?
to
I mean, we have a giant
90%
platform.
of the
We are constantly being like, here's somebody who screwed up. Here's somebody who purposely and intentionally did something very wrong. This is how you got to,
And I think you have a positive effect. MeatEater
for sure
has a positive effect on the non-hunting public. Now, if you hadn't said those things over the years, I don't know where would we be?
Yeah. Well, look at one of the biggest hunting celebrity influencers was Theodore Roosevelt, who, did I say it right?
That time, yeah.
Here's a big hunting celebrity influencer named Theodore Roosevelt who wrote about hunting, wrote whole books about hunting, celebrated hunting, loved hunting, promoted hunting, got a lot of people interested in hunting. But what did he do? He would say, how is it that it's legal to go and kill thousands of shorebirds to the point where you're eliminating them off of entire nesting grounds? Right? Did people go, you're just playing into the hands of the anti-hunters?
Probably a couple.
Or was he saying, no, you're going to drive, you're driving these things to extinction.
Yeah.
All hunting is not the same.
100%.
There's a way to go about it. No, there's like a responsible way to go about it that has sustainability in mind and a respect for the resource. And there's the way to go about it where you're just going to kind of ruin the whole thing.
Yeah.
100%.
Conservation.
Yeah.
That's
where the word comes
and
from.
eradication. They would,
Conserve.
Yeah.
So it's not, I mean, Leopold, another great hunting influencer, right? Celebrated hunting, wrote about hunting, got people into it. Also had a lot to say about some things we do that aren't that great, including things that some hunters do that aren't that great.
Sure. Yep. Well, to that whole point, like my whole thing is, or our whole thing is really is, do you want policy to be put in place by the squeaky wheels of anti-hunting, or would you rather the decision makers hear from the hunters and have policy be put in place guided by us?
Yeah. But that's one of the things that's come out of, that's one of the things that over the years has come out of trapping regulation is you've seen a lot of self-policing over the years. Well, I shouldn't just point that one out. I will quickly, I'm going to move on to another one. The amount of self-policing you've seen from trappers over the years about best practices to avoid conflict with dogs, right? You've seen a lot of self-policing, meaning they're saying, we could wait, not do anything, and have a total trap ban.
Yep.
Or we could find a way that, like, how do we look at potential areas of conflict and write these rules up in a way that lets us continue to do what we do and eliminate conflict? Because it's one or the other. We either do things where there's zero regulations, no setbacks, no set restrictions, and then we wait until you can't do anything, or we find a way to ease the tension by taking some small steps that we can articulate from an educated perspective about how we could go about our business and not cause trouble. You see it in the fishing industry, right? Self-policing in the fishing industry. And then a famous case would be with mountain lions. You talk to anyone involved in the history of mountain lion, it's like the first people to come forward on mountain lion regulations were mountain lion hunters.
Yep. And that's how it should be. I mean,
they were smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be
because
proactive.
you want to
Get
keep
ahead of
something
it.
around to continue to do it. Would you rather go hunting once every 3 years or never again? You know, so you think about it like, from that perspective. Everybody always cares about what's seemingly important to them.
Sure.
So, think about it. That's the reality of it. If anti-hunters get what they want, they're going to wave their magic wand and get rid of hunting completely. They're not just going for one thing. They're going for it all eventually.
Yeah.
If you picture the private conversations,
I have.
the private conversations are, we're going to do away with it all. We're just going to.
When this happened, I was like, I saw a guy like this.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is about
maybe they just played right into our hands.
the funny thing about the anti-hunting angle is they're not using this to get rid of wolf hunting in Wyoming because they know that will never happen. They're using it in places like Colorado.
They have no foothold in Wyoming.
And that's why
this thing that happened is
too much.
probably not going to change how wolves are managed in Wyoming.
Not in Wyoming.
No.
Definitely not in Wyoming.
It's going to affect everywhere else.
And, you talk about the private conversation. Last year, 2 years ago, it came back now as a different initiative. It's not really private anymore. So it was IP3, I think. IP3 in Oregon. That one, they kind of did away with that. Now it's going to be IP28. Is
that the fur ban?
No, it's an everything ban.
It's
fishing. It's farming. breeding
animal
of
husbandry.
You can't even trim your dog's nails.
Yeah.
That's how bad it is.
Well, that's a publicity play, though. I mean,
but there's people signing on.
Yeah.
So there's obviously a group of people that believe that.
It's the pinnacle of what they want. If they could get what they want, that's it.
Oh, they're like, let's just cut to the, instead of nitpicking, let's just
go
get
for
this
it.
over with all one shebang.
That is a great public service announcement, though. Like, we're heading into elections and a legislative session here in Montana, so you're starting to see a lot more people hounding you on the street for signatures.
Yeah.
And their job is to get the signature. The last lady who stopped me 3 times, I had to say, can I see the language of the bill? it's this. I'm like, that's how the bill's written? No. And then finally I had to say, I am an informed voter. Show me the language of the bill so I can read it. And she said, oh, okay, most people don't want that.
Yeah, because you're like 1 in a million. Who wants to read it?
Right? Yeah. So like what? They're boiling it down.
What was the bill?
It was on abortion rights.
Oh.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. Right. So it's pro-life. Okay, what's that? You know? It's like, okay, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so you can imagine how like the petitions going around Colorado are phrased, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right?
Well, we don't have to imagine. We know exactly. No one eats mountain lion meat. We're going out there for the head. Mountain lions are going to go extinct.
They're endangered.
That's the latest one. What else? Hunters. You know, we're all the guy from Daniel, Wyoming. That's who we are. That's why we're out there doing it. And so we can take a picture and put it on social media.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. The not eating mountain lion thing has been really eye-opening to me. I've never. I live in California, so the whole mountain lion thing.
Yeah, you'll never eat one there.
And even bringing a mountain lion back,
you can't even bring a mountain lion.
I can't even bring it back if I go out of state or wherever. But
really,
yeah. You can't even bring the hide back.
Don't you remember the game commissioner?
Yeah, but I didn't know. I thought that was just that they thought it was hypocritical on his part. I didn't know that there was a ban on bringing them back.
Yeah,
yeah, you can't. Even
unless
bring
I have a
across state
museum.
lines.
If I start a museum, then I can bring whatever I want back. But yeah. I cannot bring a hide back.
Even a fully taxidermied piece, you cannot. With
legally
documentation
harvested, fully taxidermied.
from another state that allows it, you cannot.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's crazy.
Shit, man. I don't know how I didn't know that, but I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I wanted to know, because I've heard from so many people, and I knew this, but I wanted to know, you know, kind of publicly on social media, hey, who eats mountain lion? Send me your pictures. Send me the recipes. Send me the cuisine, whatever. Flooded with pictures. Flooded with the best look, you know, mountain lion egg roll, mountain lion whatever. And so we created a bunch of videos. I think CRWM just put up one actually that we did on an entire video where it's showing food and kind of talking about what's going on in Colorado. And then, by the way, everything you just saw, that was all mountain lion. You know, so anyway, the cats aren't trophies. They are 100% just relying on lies. That's what they're telling people when they're gathering signatures. You know, where they're getting paid, what was it, $7-10 a signature?
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's the process of ballot box biology. That's really the issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's better understood. Robbie at Blood Origins just did a great video on this today, but it's better understood if you take a different industry, take I don't know, surgeons or whatnot, you know, in the medical field. Should we go to the public and say, this is how doctors should perform surgery? Should we override that, you know, by public opinion? And when we're out there getting those signatures, we can say whatever we want. There's no fact checks. Doesn't matter. You can, when you're, you know, collecting signatures, you can, like I said, you can say, you know, mountain lions aren't eaten. They're going to be extinct. Whatever. You can say whatever you want to get the signatures.
All hunters are like this guy and Cody. Or excuse me, this guy Cody.
Yeah, yeah. And Daniel.
Daniel,
Wyoming.
thank you.
And now doctors have to follow these procedures for brain surgery. We have wildlife professionals who go to school, they have their doctorates, they have their PhDs, they have, you know, whatever, who are managing wildlife, and that's their job. That's their profession. I don't think people really understand that. So when you supersede that with going to the public, making up lies and changing what they're able to do or not able to do, that's the real, I mean, to me, that's the real danger there. And not that biologists are perfect, not that our state agencies make the most perfect decisions, but I think they are the experts that we have to rely on, and that we can, you know, kind of hold we can hold them accountable, right, for the actions that they decide on, or that they, advise to the commissions to make decisions on. The real problem here is ballot box biology. That's what we got to inform the public on.
Right.
You know, like what danger are you bringing to the table when these things are allowed to come to a vote?
Right. So like that's always been the anti-hunting establishment's goal is to win in the area of public perception, public arena.
Yeah, they're not getting what they want.
They can't.
They don't get what they want from fish and game agencies. They don't get what
Right.
they want from game commissions, and so the idea is you take it to the voters and turn something that you'll take a policy issue that isn't going the way you want through established channels and try to drive it on public opinion. Which, I mean, to be fair, happens in other areas.
Of course.
It happens in other areas as well. But people have pointed out the chaos that would ensue if every piece of policy was driven by a metric of public opinion about it in that moment.
100%. So, like, what Charles was saying, we have professionals and they follow science and they have data that makes informed decisions, where the anti-hunters want us to deal with strictly like on emotion, and they deal with social sciences. It's the only science that they can manipulate. Like when we first got started, we were dealing with a bill in California that was trying to get rid of bear hunting. They did a poll, and it said, I don't remember what the numbers were, arbitrary number, like 85% of the public doesn't want us to bear hunt anymore. And the questions they were asking, there's not a single hunter that I know that would not agree with the question that they were asking. They were asking, like, are you opposed to lopping off a bear's head and leaving it out in the woods? No, I'm not. I mean, yes, I am opposed to that. No, I would not like to see that.
Yeah.
Are you okay with shooting cubs and shooting sows with cubs? No, so like, of course they're going to come up with 85% because even hunters are going to say, agree with or go along with what they're trying to steer.
They just paint a picture that just isn't reality.
But we're living in a society, and Steve's pointed this out many, many times, where the structure of regulated hunting is a surprise to a huge portion of the voting population, right? They're like, interesting. There's population studies, and this is data driven, and then there's a portion of that, and then this is account. Well, what about roadkill? Is that account? Oh, it is. Okay. Well, right. It's like it or not, there's the burden of education is always going to be on us, right? It's like we're I don't mind taking the high road, but we're constantly forced into the high road side of things.
When we were,
and that takes a lot more time per person, right?
Yep.
Yeah. When we were in Utah, this was really evident to us because we were riding in Ubers and stuff, like to go to dinner or whatever. And every time we were in an Uber, we would engage with the driver. And everyone that we talked to didn't know that there was seasons, didn't know that we had to go buy tags. Basically, their idea was that you could go to Walmart, buy a gun, go out in the field and shoot whatever the heck you want. And there was no perception of or they would perceive even the ones that knew about tags, that a tag meant a dead animal. They didn't know it was, a 9% chance of you actually killing something, with that, or harvesting an elk or with that tag or whatever. And there was just all these things that we hunters know about and we take for granted, seasons, draws, and all these other little things that the general public doesn't know.
Yeah.
The non-public doesn't, the non-hunting public doesn't know. So if they don't know that, and the only thing that they're being exposed to on a constant basis is what the anti-hunters are feeding, of course they're going to have this preconceived notion of who the hunter is.
Yeah.
They're going to think you're Elmer Fudd. They're going to think you're a redneck.
Well, Elmer Fudd never got anything.
True. This is true.
I found often, all throughout my life, talking to urban people, to have them be pleasantly surprised to learn about the regulatory structure. Pleasantly surprised. And then you want to go like, oh, those city slicking idiots.
Yeah.
But put yourself in their shoes.
Yep.
Let's say you're talking to someone, you're someone from where I grew up in, rural West Michigan, meet someone from Manhattan. You must live in a war zone. I bet you can't even go outside without getting raped and mugged.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like people just aren't aware of other people's worlds. So it's not to go and look at someone who doesn't hunt, doesn't grow up around hunting, isn't exposed to hunting, that they have a totally different idea about it? Well, yeah. Right? And you know what, too? The people I hang out with a lot of times are idiots about urban life.
Right, of course.
Because, okay, tell me a thing or two about the subway system. You just get robbed. Like, dude, there's people been riding the subways 50 years, never seen a robbery. Do you know what I mean? But you don't know. You jump to conclusions and you have wild ideas. And it's like it's a human problem rather than anything else. And then there are people that that in the other direction are educated about it and choose to just manipulate reality. Right. And that's like far less excusable than just being ignorant of a world that you don't have any reason to have ever been educated on that world. You know?
Yeah, it always comes down to education. And I think as a group, hunters, we do a pretty good job of getting on our soapbox and talking to each other. But we don't ever talk to the non-hunting public. We're probably not going to change anti-hunters' minds, but okay, let's leave that 5% alone. But the 90% in between us, they're willing to listen. Everyone that we talk to, and like, you know, that's not even last night. We were at a comedy club here, and we got you. They're all going to watch. They're all going to listen to MeatEater.
They're all excited about MeatEater.
Yeah, we had the whole crowd going. But you know, they're willing to listen if you're giving them, oh, you know, I didn't know that about this, or I didn't know that about that, and they. What we're doing by having those conversations is next time some bill comes up or something comes up now, they'll be like, oh, you know, I remember so-and-so, or I know so-and-so from work, and, you know, Steve's a good guy. Steve told me this. I don't necessarily believe, I'm going to look into this a little bit more before I put my name on it, or I'm not going to vote that way because I know this is BS or whatever.
Yeah.
So
that's always been an objective of mine, in imagining that you're having conversations like through a career and talking about hunting and talking about fishing and natural resources issues. I have this picture that there's two audiences. One audience is people from completely outside of that world looking in, maybe just voyeuristically. Maybe they're looking in because they're curious, maybe looking in because they're deeply suspicious, but whatever. They're looking in on this world. And there's also a conversation that you're always having with people that are from the world. I much prefer the conversations with people that are from the world.
Sure.
Like, that's just more engaging to me. But I'm aware of this other conversation with people that are looking in. And I imagine some of the time that backfires. But I think a majority of the time, in my experience, which is long now, the majority of time it creates a bit of understanding and some sympathy. Meaning, if they go to a Whole Foods and they're presented with a thing that would be stop hunting.
Yeah.
Those who spent time looking in are going to more be like what Cal said. Well, let me see. Because I hang out with some of those guys. I know some of those guys.
Yeah.
I've eaten deer meat over some of those guys' houses. The guys I know that are into that world know a shitload about wildlife and really love wildlife. Let me take a look.
Right.
Rather than, yeah, I'll sign it.
Yeah.
Hunting, screw that.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? I think you generally, like, a majority of interactions create a sympathy, understanding, empathy.
Of course.
Or a desire to engage, you know?
That's part of what we're working on. We got
I was just going to say that.
Go ahead.
So imagine, I live in San Francisco. Well, now I'm a few miles outside, but I was there for a while. Imagine you go to San Francisco, imagine you go to Portland, imagine you go to Denver, wherever, here. You drive down the highway and you see billboards that are framed for the general non-hunting public about what hunting is. Not to become a hunter, but to understand what hunting is, right? To tackle, I don't know, the things that they don't know. Conservation, ecological, economical, the historical, the cultural aspects, whatever it is. Play on their emotions about people who do hunt and their stories. And wow, women hunt. Did you know that? Yeah, women hunt. Black people hunt. Did you know that? You know, like, let's change the narrative a little bit. When you turn on the TV, you see I don't know if it's on anymore, but Sarah McLachlan, you know, you got the Humane Society commercials, right?
Sarah McLachlan threw with those guys? What was her big hit?
In the Arms of an Angel.
Many
she had a lot.
yes.
She was big.
But In the Arms of the Angel was the one that was used all the time.
So she had a big hit.
Probably in the arms.
Oh,
of the
Yeah, I
angel.
think it was.
I think there's a few big
Dude,
hits.
Phil for a minute pulled his mic up to his lips.
He's about to sing it.
Thought better of it and moved it away. What was it, Phil?
I'm not. It's in the arms of it. That's the big one, and that's the one they played
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
those
Angel
commercials.
That's the
for
Uses
Humane
commercial.
For
Society.
just
Angel
99
Adia.
cents, you
I
can
don't
save.
think the camera's on Phil.
Mystery.
Phil, can you aim the camera at me?
It's on you. It's on
Okay.
you right now.
Phil did one of these.
And you read my mind exactly. Yes.
So imagine you turn on the TV, you see commercials about this messaging that would be framed for the general public to understand it. Why do we not have that? This is $1 billion industry. We spend a lot of money on habitat, a lot of money on a lot of things. A lot of money is coming through Pittman Robertson. What is it now? 20 billion? I don't know.
That's a lot.
It's a lot since 1937.
Yeah, all through.
Yeah, all through.
Close to $1 billion a couple years ago.
Oh,
It was
we
one-
broke
1.5
$1 billion
1.5
3
billion.
years ago,
Yeah.
4 years ago.
Just in 1 year, yeah.
In 2020. I think.
Well, yeah, the COVID personal firearm bump
Yeah.
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, people always like to
Yeah.
point out that and it's so fair and so true that you can't talk about Pittman Robertson funding without pointing out this reality.
Mhm.
That money, I mean, let's be honest, that money's gun owners.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot.
Like
A lot.
you can break those gun owners out, but that money is
well, 25% of gun owners are hunters, though.
sure. But I'm not.
Yeah,
That's a
and the
big
original
constituency.
intent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just at a time, I think at a time when you did that excise, when you
Sure.
formed that excise tax
It
in
was flipped.
1937, it was viewed as like, well, who's going to be paying this?
Yeah.
Hunters. It has just come to be that as cultural things have changed and time's gone on, that was had they at the time, let me put it this way. If at the time of the enactment of that act, if they had said you need to check a box about what you're going to do with that firearm,
Yeah.
and if you put down hunting, then it goes to the Pittman Robertson Fund. If they had done that, that fund would be much smaller
Sure.
today than it is, just out of fairness.
Way different.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about like promoting,
But what I'm saying,
hunting in
yeah,
that
this
way,
arbitrary number.
Sure.
Let's just say $70 million a year that we as an industry spend on a media campaign throughout the United States, a Super Bowl commercial. I'm just saying $70 million
Right.
a year.
Yeah.
But we change 3%, 5%, 6%. This is a generation. We're basically doing what the anti-hunters have done over decades. They have slowly changed the mind. They've a sea change, really.
The Bambi
I grew up in
effect.
Michigan too. There was a time in my life where I thought I didn't know people didn't hunt. Right?
Yeah.
Times have changed. Plus it was just where I
Pat
grew up,
Durkin,
but-
speaking of Wisconsin, once said, if you're not a deer hunter, you share a bed with one.
Yep.
Right.
Or maybe a house with one, but you get the
Something
point.
like that, yeah.
So that's what I'm
It's
getting at.
yeah,
is-
it's funny to bring up the billboard thing because anti-hunters use the billboard campaigns
All the time.
very effectively and in a very manipulative way. And
Yeah.
Cal was pointing out one around here where they're equating the delisting of grizzlies would mean hunting, and so there's a picture of a sow with cubs, and there's a crosshair on the sows.
Yep.
On the sow, you'd be like, I can assure you, one thing, the last time they moved to delist, Montana wasn't issuing any grizzly tags.
Right.
I can damn sure tell you that since you can't shoot a sow black bear with cubs, there is no way in the world that they're going to open up and extend any harvest that would happen in the future to sows accompanied by cubs.
Sure. Well, those are the lies.
There's one right now. There's an organization that has always pushed for a public land trapping ban.
Yeah.
Wolverines were recently listed, and this is a whole deep conversation, but Wolverines were recently listed as threatened under the ESA. There's now a billboard in town from Gallatin Valley Wildlife Association, I think. It's like a mostly anti-hunting group. They have a billboard that says, and these are people that always wanted to see a trapping ban. It now says, "Stop trapping on public land, save the endangered wolverine."
Yep.
Well, that's part of the
It's
problem.
listed
with,
as threatened.
Mhm.
You can't trap them anyway.
That's part of the problem with like promoting the positives when you're always forced to be in a reactionary
Yeah.
position.
Yeah.
And like fighting these kind of things. Like the dude in Wyoming who screwed up. Like you're constantly in a position of defending yourself rather than promoting yourself, which is tough.
And if you do promote it, do you do their playbook and just put up totally outrageous lies?
No. I don't think we need to.
Be like, hunters are 100 times more likely than anyone else to be great people.
Or you could be like, have you ever been in an accident hitting a deer? Well, shoot them all.
Yeah.
Before they kill you.
No, but the biggest problem is that we live in a world right now that we are dealing with these just memes and little quick hits. And the anti-hunters have such a easy job of swaying public perception. Like it's very easy to post a picture of a guy holding a deer with a bloody background and whatever, and very negative thoughts are going to come to your head. Like, if you don't know what hunting is, if you're not exposed to hunting. So we have this like super hard job of like, how do we tell people about conservation, about the money, about the caring of the wildlife, about the human intrinsic values and the things that the meals and all these good things that come about with hunting. Yep. It's changed. I know probably everybody's life in this room, right? How do we have those conversations when you only have 3 seconds to do it? Mm-hmm. If we had the chance to have like a podcast or 3-hour discussion and nuanced discussion with everybody that you encounter, it'd be a lot easier job, but we don't. So we have to start coming up with ways. And I think it's on us to have to start talking to, we all know people that don't hunt. We all interact with people at work and, at the store or whatever that don't hunt. So let's start giving them positive interactions with us. Let's start communicating these things with us. Because there's I don't know, the numbers keep changing, somewhere between 14 to 16 million people that hunt in the United States. If we change the mind of or talk to one person every year, in 10 years, we might be a lot closer to, having a better understanding with the general public, or the non-hunting public, I should say, of what hunting is.
I don't personally want to see more hunters. I want that. I'd like to see less hunters. I want to see more people accept what hunting is. And not just that, but also understand that hunting is an effective management tool that is used by these agencies that people don't even know exist in the first place. They don't even know these agencies exist. So there's a lot of education to happen there. But what John was saying, we all talk to one person, we all talk to 2 people or whatever. How do you, I see that as having a positive effect on the perception of what hunting is to the general non-hunting public. Do you feel the same way? Your show's on Netflix. That has to, it's not just hunters watching your show, right?
Yeah. I find it interesting that the oldest representational art on earth is people cataloging the hunts. You don't know what's
the first painting ever. Yeah.
You don't know what's in their mind. I've always written about what I'm interested in and written about my world. And as a writer or a creator of some sort, I'm going to talk about a certain set of ideas. And as time changes and technology changes, I'm going to continue to talk about a set of ideas that I'm interested in and I feel compelled to discuss in whatever way is available for me to talk about them. Mm-hmm. I think that had to go back to, and I'm not, in no way would I ever equate myself to him, but if you go back to someone like Roosevelt or, I mentioned Leopold earlier, I think that they would have taken the ideas that they dealt in and they would have talked about them on podcasts. I think they would have talked about them on social media. They would not have limited it to books. They would have not limited it to articles. They were vocal about their enthusiasms and vocal about their love, and they had a big impact, and they would have talked about it in any way possible. The argument about, there's this kind of pervasive argument about, I had someone actually frame it to me one day about like somehow conservation that get, introducing people to the idea of hunting, getting people interested in hunting was bad for conservation. Let's take a look at that for a second. New Mexico is going to issue a certain amount of elk tags. It's capped. Mm-hmm. Okay. If you're talking about conservation, a bunch of people wanting to apply for elk tags and wanting to go hunting doesn't change the number of people that are out hunting.
Right.
They're confusing oftentimes conservation with convenience, meaning they're mad that it's not as convenient to get a tag. Don't tangle this up with conservation.
Mm-hmm.
The elk harvest is fixed. Let's talk about conservation for a minute as well. You go to Wisconsin, you go to Michigan, wildlife managers are writing public letters because they cannot get people to harvest enough deer. They're seeing habitat degradation, an unprecedented disease transmission in certain areas because they cannot get the doe harvest up. The people that are hunting now aren't killing does. Not enough. Conservation in that area, if you want to talk about conservation in that area would be encouraging a type of hunter motivated by venison to go out and get does. That's conservation. Conservation in that case is not saying, shh, don't tell anybody about hunting. Another thing is I find it's like, here's something that's incredibly common. You'll have people like me that come from a place like I come from Michigan. I moved out to Montana out of an interest in hunting and fishing. When I came to Montana, I moved in on other people's hunting spots. You just did. The only person that has any justification to start bitching about losing their spot to incoming people would be Native Americans. And if you're really, really, really deeply concerned about people that had their hunting spots overrun, you should be involved in the land back movement and helping Native Americans. If not, buddy, you took someone's spot.
Right.
When you moved out west, you took someone's spot. When you started applying for sheep tags and goat tags and moose tags and drawing those tags, you cut in line from someone that was applying before you were applying. You just did. But people's memories are so short. Whatever they were motivated by to move out west and start hunting, they think that because it was them, that was so pure. Everybody else since them is just an asshole.
Right.
It's like, come on, man.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, come on. And there's this other funny thing too about this like industry thing. Like, let's say you work in a, I don't know, just pulling it out of thin air. Let's say you worked at the ARS where you draw your money from federal taxpayer dollars that are part of agricultural subsidies. Okay? You know that money's coming because it's pork barrel protected. You know that money's coming. You never have to market anything. And it winds up being, it's like so weird to see an industry where people are in the open market economy, creating jobs, generating tax revenue, right? It's like upsetting because you live outside of a world where there's any accountability. You know what butters your bread, right? And if it went to a public vote, that bread wouldn't get buttered. It just wouldn't. True. So this whole conversation, I would rather, Cal was born in Montana. I'm open to hear Cal bitch about stuff from Montana. I'll indulge it all day long. But this whole thing of like a ton of guys like me that moved out here and started finding hunting spots. And let me tell you, man, there was people hunting those spots, dude. They were you.
Yeah.
And now you're in that spot. So like this conservation question, give me a break, dude. It's convenience. It's convenience.
Oh, it's 100%.
It's like you took someone's spot. Someone's in your spot now. And you know what? There's a couple things. If the person in your spot is a veteran, screw you. If the person in your spot's a person with their kids, screw you. What makes it your spot?
It's not.
Yeah. Like go ask the Blackfeet about it and see what they think about who's in their spot.
Yeah.
Give me a break, man. It just goes on. And it's like just.
Well, we're our own worst enemy.
Idiotic.
We're our own worst enemy.
Holy shit.
I think it's a jealousy thing, really, because you see somebody having success or you see somebody doing something that you want to do, so automatically somehow they're cheating to get that, or they're doing something wrong to get that. So if that's stealing spots or he's poaching or
getting their tags,
whatever it is.
I mean, having different factions fighting with each other is never going to help hunting, man.
It's never.
And I'm sure they're still like getting back to the wolf thing or the bear thing. Like there's hunters out there that
tons
don't like that shit.
Yep.
You know,
There's a really interesting statistic that goes along with that. Every time there is an argument where hunters are on both sides of the fence of an issue, whatever that is, it almost always, it's like in the 90 percentile, aligns when the smoke clears, it ends up aligning with anti-hunting movement. So think about that. If you're fighting your fellow hunter about something, like, okay, this is a simple one. Trail cam ban in Arizona. Okay.
I don't think you can say that that's an anti-hunting thing.
But there was anti-hunters on the side of that. So that's what helped tip the scales. I don't think
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
That's what I'm not saying that anti-hunters are driving that. I'm saying that if you're this way and this guy's this way,
if they're going to be on a side,
they're going to go with the side that goes against.
That is true.
And it's almost always, it never works out for hunting. Now, could we have found a better solution than just, hey, let's get rid of, I mean, this is just an arbitrary example, but could we have found a better solution? Could hunters have gotten together and said, okay, well, yeah, I agree with you. I don't like this happening, or I don't want guys coming in and checking their trail cameras while I'm sitting on a water hole, because that's what started it. So they say, I don't know.
The diverse coalitions, right, are what win fights, right? So like when you're like, oh, the anti-hunters jumped in on this, they're able to skew things at the end because they're like, okay, we've heard from this group. Oh, and then here's this other group. And so, yeah, I can see how that would push a thing. But that comes down to why everybody who does anything that you like to do, you need to figure out, educate yourself on how to be a better advocate for those things and be willing to be involved, right? I mean, we're just at a point in time where if you're not going to weigh in on the decision-making processes, these burdensome regulatory processes, where thank God we live in a place where public comment periods are built into the process. Somebody else is going to go in there and do it for you. Right? And, we really do have a broad, diverse coalition amongst hunters, but you have to say, hey, I'm in the, plumbers labor union. This is where I live. This is my family. This is how much money I spend. And we do it hunting. Right? And people need to go through, and we need to make sure that we're checking all those boxes when we're saying, hey, this access issue, and I think access to wildlife is a very smart way of framing this Colorado issue, right? It's like, there is no reasonable science that says we shouldn't be allowed to take advantage of this opportunity should you want to take advantage of the opportunity to just pursue lions. But somebody's like, oh, well, there's not a lot of them. Not a lot of hunters doing that. So let's just shut off that little bit of access to that opportunity. Right? And so you need, unfortunately, like the way a lot of politicians work is like, well, we've already heard from the hunters. Right? But if you can go in and say, listen, yeah, I do some hunting, but really I'm a fly fisherman. This is why this issue that doesn't seem to be connected matters to me. Or, dirt bikes, ATVs, all the outdoor pursuits, right? And it's like, well, the cat hunting thing matters to me because there's no reason to stop this group of people from doing what they're doing. You're just listening to some other group that says it shouldn't exist.
And it doesn't stop there.
Yeah, people bitch about
what are the
riding
consequences
motorcycles all
of
the
getting
time.
rid of that too? Like,
Yeah.
are we just looking at the issue for the issue and not looking at the side effects that happen to it?
Right. And like Steve says, people's memories are very short, right? It's like,
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a thing I want to push back on a little bit, and we discussed this in the past, is there are going to come times on regulatory issues where the general will of hunters is going to align with anti-hunters.
Oh, sure.
I mean, you take a look at this. This is the thing I always like to bring up because it was so clean and instant, was when the idea of using drones for hunting came in. Okay. Right when drones were hitting and becoming this thing just widely available, inexpensive, I think in 1 year you had 13 states come out, 13 Western states come out with drone bans, including Alaska, right? Had you gone to the anti-hunting world and said, should you be able to use a drone for hunting? What do you think they're going to say?
No.
Okay. Well, so did Alaska's Game Commission.
Sure.
So I don't think, like, in some of these cases, it's a little more complicated than to say, like,
Sure.
when they side with the anti-hunters, because it's just, right? It's like you're going to wind up, I don't even want to use the term strange bedfellows, but you're coming at a question from opposite directions, but you're landing on that question the exact same way. You know,
sure.
like you
I
can't.
see your point.
Yeah, it's impossible. I don't want to call it an unfortunate accident, but it just sometimes your sentiment, a hunter's sentiment, is going to align that way.
Well, it's the same thing goes with the Wyoming wolf thing, but it's, do you want them driving the policy or do you want the policy to come from us?
Well, in this case, in the drone case, the policy very much came from hunters.
Right.
You know, as we just heard from some people involved in the commission in Arizona on the governor tag issue, like that policy change is coming from people who have untarnished reputations as pro hunters. Right. It's just some things would be that if you're knee jerk anti anything having to do with hunting, you're going to align oftentimes with hunting restrictions. If a state game agency says, do we want to allow nighttime hunting of elk with thermals?
Right.
Hunters are going to say what?
No.
And what are anti-hunters going to say?
No, of course not.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we
You're in bed
dealt
together.
with something. Was it last year with the horses? We actually
So I was going to say, yeah. So we have aligned, and I with the Center for Biological Diversity a couple times.
Oh, really?
And it's
Yeah.
on
Well,
wild.
tell me more.
It's on wild horses.
No, I mean, this is not uncommon,
Yeah.
right? I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Well,
Yeah.
it's uncommon in our space, but we basically got pictures and documentation from Robin Silver, who I think is the co-founder of CBD. I believe
he's
he
up
lives in
there somewhere,
Arizona. Apache Sitgreaves National Forest, I think, is what it was. They're calling them feral horses because the evidence points to there was a wildfire. It burnt down fences of native tribes. Their horses got out. Now they're living here. So they're not wild horses. They're feral horses.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
dude, I feel like you got to provide a little background for people.
Well, there was a wild horse, untarnished by the hands of man and manipulation.
You're doing the background right now?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
How far back you going?
Pleistocene.
Okay.
Okay,
End of story.
Walk us through a quick chronology here, because these are confusing, very confusing terms.
So that horse died off. Several theories as to how, but they very well could have been hunted and killed by early humans on this continent.
12,000 years went by.
Yep, leap forward in time. The Spanish arrive with horses at a couple of different geographic locations, but those indigenous people to North America, southern North America, start stealing those mainly for food, and horses run away. Even in modern times, horses run away.
Right.
So this allowed for like another food option out there on the prairie, because they were out there making more horses. But I mean, that's where, like, that's how a feral population begins. Now we're just like a long road down the way.
I think what you're getting at is at this point, all wild horses are feral horses.
Genetically, yes.
If you went to, but there was a bifurcation at a point where they looked at these sort of ancestral Spanish horses. They we Americans, whatever, dubbed those wild horses. But if Cal's horse ran away, that's a feral horse. Those have different governing rules. But the world has gotten murky in that among those ancestral wild horses, you got all kind of runaway feral horses.
Right.
And so they do it by not what is the animal's history, where is the animal standing?
Yeah, geography. It's
Yeah.
what was it, 1970 something? They like made boundaries, and any horses that were in this, I think it's in the
believe
70s,
so.
something like that. Any horses in this area is a wild horse.
Yeah.
Anything outside of that is a feral horse.
Yeah, we have Wild Horse Island here in Montana.
We got
Where they're feral.
We got a crazy.
But yeah, if you could take you could take a horse you've owned for 20 years, put it on the right patch of ground, and that horse becomes a wild horse.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, they go feral very quickly, or they go wild.
No, I mean, I'm sorry, legally.
Oh, legal.
It legally becomes a wild horse.
Yes, you're right.
You just got to get rid of any markings.
Yeah, no
and make
brand.
sure the brand inspector isn't around. Yeah,
I don't know. I'm taking something. That's why we need to have the right guest. I'm taking something that's so complicated and trying to compress it, and I'm not a subject matter expert. But anyhow, go ahead.
No,
you found yourself on the same side.
Well, they were legally classified as feral horses, not wild. Otherwise, I don't think anything could have been done. But for that issue, we were the squeakiest wheel, which whenever this had come up before the
can I enter?
Yeah.
What was the issue? Like, get rid of them,
to remove them
by
from
lethal.
the Apache.
Yeah.
Like the landscape there was just
getting decimated.
It was just dirt left. No water.
It was the
nothing.
water situation was the worst thing.
Yeah.
They would like physically see tanks that elk would normally drink at. Horse, whole brood of horses come in
and there was endangered species.
There was an endangered species. That's what helped.
This is where the CBD comes in a lot. They're all
It's like
about
a
habitat
frog or
but
something?
A frog, I believe. Yeah, frog.
My girlfriend's a horse, grew up as a horse person. She gets really annoyed with me when we're driving through parts of Montana and I point to shitty pastures and I'm like, oh, that's a horse property.
Yeah. Right. It's the truth.
So in this case, in the desert Southwest areas of Nevada, California, Arizona, New Mexico, you have a imposter wild animal out competing true native wildlife for grass and water.
100%.
Yeah, and that's the like the crux of the issue.
Yeah,
Right.
and I talked to him 2 days ago, and this might be the guy I refer to you if you want to talk to him. But he said they've removed 500 horses now, and they are going to. There's farms. I don't know what they're called.
Some of them are getting relocated, but I think some of them are getting lethal.
People buy them. People.
No, they can't.
I thought there were some that they approved the lethal tick.
Oh, maybe they were not true wild horses then.
Well, they're not.
They're
Or
not.
they were diseased or crippled or
They're feral, 100% feral.
These,
Okay,
because of whenever that wildfire happened, they were classified as these are feral. These escaped out of the indigenous, out of the reservation. So they were able to classify
White Mountain Apache Indian tribe.
That's what it was. Yeah. So there's an example of alignment.
Like the Center for Biological Diversity wanted them removed. Wildlife, like more hook and bullet wildlife activists wanted them removed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Back to the CBD, we are fighting them now on this Catalina Island. You know about the mule deer extermination deal?
Yeah,
Okay.
we've covered that exhaustively, man.
So,
but they backed up on it.
no aerial gunning. That's not going to happen, at least not this year. 3 days ago, the commission approved PLM tags on Catalina Island to increase hunting opportunity on the island. That's what we asked for. But the Humane Society's on our side. There's other groups. It's funny. So I was just on Catalina Island, and
you guys been on the phone together?
Yeah. No, it's funny. We did some podcasts together. I'm like, well, this is interesting. I'm here with the Humane Society, and this lady said, hey, I'm all for hunting. I'm all for management. Yeah.
We were very surprised about that.
Yeah, just not eradication. I'm like, I'm right there with you. I'm like,
That's
high-fiving.
that's a not
High-fiving.
HSUS standpoint.
No, never.
Does she still work for them?
right.
And did she just say that to get
She's
to
not
get
on the
this
billboard
across the
team.
line? I
So
don't know.
there is a difference. So HSUS is kind of like the national brand, right? And
Yeah,
then
that's
there's
an animal
chapters.
rights. Oh yeah, this causes huge confusion.
Yeah. So
Yeah, HSUS and your local Humane Society are not the same thing.
very different.
Yeah.
Very different.
So this was a local, maybe a local.
This is local.
I see.
However, the Humane, I believe HSUS has come out in opposition of this because they're just against
Yeah.
killing anything, right?
They
So-
don't. They don't entangle themselves into things from a habitat perspective.
Yeah.
They are focused on like individual. They're focused on the welfare of individual animals.
Mhm, mhm.
You know.
Yep.
I recently looked at some interesting documentation out of California with HSUS, where HSUS had petitioned the state to end California's bear harvest, or sorry, to petition the state to end California's bear hunt over concerns
We were
that
big on that.
that populations were plummeting,
Mhm.
which was the opposite of true.
Yeah.
And then later, one of them clarified. Someone, I think it was on a podcast. Someone sent me a transcript. Someone pressed them. If you're arguing to close the bear season based on a population number that you understand to be true,
Yeah.
what is the population number where you would not oppose
She
the
said
bear
no.
harvest? And she acknowledged there is no number.
So that
Right.
was actually
We actually have that on video.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that was actually in a commission meeting.
Yeah.
That was Commissioner Murray pressed Wendy Kiefover. She's the Humane Society HSUS representative. She asked her that in a commission meeting. What's the number you're happy with? You know, because they didn't know at the time when they had this petition and we had this big meeting. We had 130 hunters there, I believe. The commission was incredible. It gave us the opportunity to talk about, what we do with bear fat, with bear meat. We're like, really? The California Commission's given us this incredible opportunity to share our stories. And Humane Society was just going nuts, like disrupting the meetings. You guys can't do this. Don't let them talk about that. And they're like, wait, it's your petition. You made these claims. You made these claims that people don't eat bear, that, they do this and that. And there's only 13,000 bear in California. Well, we just proved you wrong. And one of our scientists at that time, nobody knew this was coming, stood up, gave a presentation and said, hey, we're working on a bear management plan. Which is now to present. They have one.
Yeah, the comment period just ended. Yeah.
He goes, I think we're looking at 60, 70,000 bear. And it just, Humane
Blew their
Society was
mind.
like, what? Did anybody know about this? Because we look like idiots
Because
right
they
now.
were pushing 12.5.
Yeah.
And then the new thing is like the sort of best. It's a range of 50 something to 80 something.
Yeah.
So people are probably 65,000 bears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
in
no
California.
hunter stood up and said, now you imagine 60, 70,000 hungry bears on the edge of your child's playground. Okay?
Yeah.
That's the other thing you got to resist.
They made 100%. So they
find
made
a lot
the
of
claim.
hunters tiptoeing into this
Oh,
dangerous territory of telling everybody how dangerous wildlife
Right.
is, and that they're doing you a great service.
Yep.
Because wildlife's so dangerous.
Yep.
And that's another real. That's a.
Yeah,
that is a dangerous place to go.
we never want
it
to
is.
vilify the lion or the bear
No.
or whatever.
No.
They're just going to do what they do, the wolf.
Mhm.
But it's
No, we're in full support. We love wolves on the landscape, grizzly bear. They deserve to be there, but they do need to be managed.
and I don't know. We don't really believe in reintroduction or introduction.
It's a sticky. It's
Cat's out of the bag.
Yeah.
Sorry,
You're not going to put it back.
I should have.
How that's
Well, no,
done?
I'm just saying this. Like we had a conversation a long time ago about we had a conversation on this show with the woman that ran that ran the wolf program during the wolf reintroduction
Mhm.
in the mid '90s in Yellowstone.
Okay.
She looking back, felt that it was unnecessary. Even now,
Mhm.
says it was unnecessary at the time because we would have landed in the same place coming down. We would have landed in the same position with natural movement of animals coming in, and they were seeing it coming in. While the Colorado reintroduction bill was progressing, wolves were showing up from Wyoming.
Right.
So whether or not in 20 years, 30 years, whatever the hell it is, I think you're going to be stuck with the same set of you're going to be stuck. Whether or not those things that happen, you're probably stuck around the same set of conversations
Mhm.
around you are going to, I think this is the reality. You are going to have large predators on the landscape.
Mhm.
You're going to have large predators on more of the landscape. And there's going to become a question of, do we do management practices to do we take steps for management practices to reduce conflict and to stay with deer and elk herds that we want to see, that we hunters want to see. And that's going to be like, it's going to be somewhere between those two things. They're not going to be gone, right? They're not going to be gone. We're not going to go back in time and
re-eradicate them or whatever.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. It can't happen. There's all kinds of, I mean, we have this whole legal framework that they can't allow that to happen.
But what the prey population objectives are going to be, I think you're correct, is like going to be a big conversation. Because like here in the state of Montana, right, we're like, we love elk, want more elk.
Yeah.
A lot of folks in Montana are like, we don't want more elk.
Well,
right?
And in Colorado, where there's a new wolf population getting itself established, at some point they're going to have to decide how many elk are we willing to like
give to
those wolves, and how many elk are we saving for hunters. Right?
I think it's the only practical conversation. In the same way we debate between different stakeholders, the same way agricultural interests might argue with hunter interests about how many elk is the right number of elk, how many deer is the right number of deer. We're gonna have conversations about how many lions is the right number of lions, how many wolves is the right number of wolves, how many grizzly bears is the right number of grizzly bears, how many black bears is the right number of black bears. I don't think that the conversation is never going to return to should we poison them all. It just
right.
I mean, be realistic.
But the problem is, like, these guys are saying there is no number that's big enough for some people.
Yes. And there's no number of elk that's big enough for some people.
Right.
I don't know many guys. I don't know many elk hunters.
The convenience factor.
That bitch about having
I saw too many
bulls. I don't know those guys.
There's a big difference between reintroducing and them coming in on their own, natural attrition.
Yeah, social friction is a big issue, and I think that's part of the. To be fair to the woman that said that she sort of questions the move, she said the social conversation that we would have eventually got there. The social conversation would have been so different.
Yeah, but even ecologically, it's a big difference.
It would have been a huge difference ecologically. Yeah.
So, like, you drop 100 wolves into an area. And all the prey, they've never seen a wolf before in their life. They don't know how to react towards a wolf. It's just like when you go out in the woods, deep back, and you run into an elk that's staring at you because he's never seen a human before.
Or in your backyard.
Or in your backyard.
One or the other, yeah. He's never seen them or they've never heard them.
Right.
And they picked the problem wolves.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
In this case, out of Oregon. They
picked
the wolves they wanted to get rid of.
And from what I understand, that's like generally what happens. Okay, like a state's like, okay, well, we need to get rid of these problem childs and let's ship them off to this state. So, you introduce a wolf that's never been on a landscape or hasn't been on a landscape for 100 years or whatever. Those animals don't know how to deal with it. Also, those wolves don't know, hey, where are my boundaries? What do I need to stay in? Like, they're just going to keep going wherever they want to go. And like, it just causes more and more problems.
Dan Gates and I were just talking last week about Colorado, specifically on the wolves. We changed topics for a minute. And we're just talking about how it is kind of funny where like that celebratory zeal of reintroduction has gone away.
Oh yeah.
Don't hear much of that anymore, but you are hearing from some of those same sources that were so happy about wolves being reintroduced to the state of like, oh boy, this is kind of hard. This is kind of.
What do you mean?
Just because now as these wolves are getting into the predicted types of friction.
There's a lot of buyer's remorse.
There's there's like, well, I didn't know it would be that, or I didn't know those wolves would be here. I thought, so it's not like this 100% dedication.
It's not kumbaya.
Not so much. And it is just interesting because third time now, like our memories are short, right?
They just approved lethal management for them.
Yep.
Oh, they did.
Yep.
To some extent.
And there's an official pack now because some of them had a couple.
Oh yeah, I just saw an article came out that they had some. Yeah.
So there's
that goes back to I think if the vote, what was that, Prop 114, in Colorado. If the vote was held today, I don't think it would pass.
Nope.
I really don't. But it goes back to what you were saying. People didn't know what they were voting for. Oh, I didn't know it meant that. I didn't know it meant this.
It was worded very weird.
Yeah.
It was worded in a way that it was sort of like a mandate that they, set into motion, a recovery plan, or it was understood, but the wording could have been confusing.
I think the wording is always confusing. I mean, even people who are trained to be able to read through these things, and you read through a crap ton of them, like I feel like it's always like a word play. There's always
it's propaganda.
For people like for the lion thing, who's going to go read through this thing and see that there's, this trophy language put in there that could be transposed onto elk and deer and stuff in the future?
Didn't I just see a clip of Cam Haines? He said, I read it and I didn't know how to vote. Like if it was me voting, because I don't know what I was supposed to do.
Yeah. No,
just because the way the whole thing was worded. So
on the issue, the broader wolf issue, I'm of the opinion, and I think you could arrive at this from a religious perspective, you could arrive at this from a secular historical view, would be that there are wild animals that live on our landscape, okay, that have just been there. They're there because God placed them there. They're there because these billions of years of Earth history and all these evolutions and ecological upheavals and things have placed in there. But there's a static nature to wildlife, and you go look and you go like, okay, at what point in history do I go and declare it being normal? Okay, meaning some people would argue, well, the Pleistocene, that should be normal, and we should bring back mammoths and bring back short-faced bears and turn them all loose because that's when humans showed up in the New World, and so normal should be that day. I tend to view normal in my mind, just because you have to pick an arbitrary point, normal in my mind is the distribution of wildlife at the time of European contact. And I don't believe in removing certain turtles from the landscape. I don't believe in removing certain birds from the landscape. I don't believe in removing certain invertebrates from the landscape. I don't like extinction. I don't like extirpation. I just don't. I don't care what it is. I don't like extinction and extirpation. And here's where it gets like a little bit complicated, because I do think that a right, like animals have a right to be on the landscape. There's a reality that we live in, and all of those species are going to need to be managed from a very human perspective of what are our needs and what are the balancing thing, because we're here.
And we're the biggest consumers of everything, and we affect more change. We never even have to leave your living room to affect what happens out in the woods.
Yeah, and as we discovered, like in certain areas, like with forest management, not doing anything is not the answer. In a lot of areas, not doing anything, letting it do its own natural thing, isn't the answer, right? Because we're here.
Yeah,
we're here.
We've stirred things up so much.
We got roads everywhere. We consume all these different, things that we take out of, wood or fuel and rocks and sand, and everything's disrupted by man. And there's 8 billion of us on the planet now.
Yeah, I like grizzly bears.
Yeah,
I like seeing them. I've never been sad to see a grizzly bear. I love grizzly bears. I don't think grizzly bears should be listed under the ESA.
Right.
Agreed.
It's like both of those things are simultaneously true for me. I love them. It's time to come off the list.
You said a lot right there. So you went back thousands of years for animals, and you brought up God, or you brought up evolution, whatever it is that people believe. I think the same idea exists for humans, because people say, "Oh, they were here first," or "It's their home." Well, where are we from?
We're not aliens.
Where exactly are we from? If you believe in the evolutionary process or the creation process, we still land here on Earth.
Like imagine someone in Africa saying, "Well, they were here first."
Yeah.
Like, define who's they.
Right. And it's always just an interesting. It really throws me off when I hear that a lot. The whole they were here first thing, and basically. But the other thing that you brought up about grizzlies and ESA, and you brought it up earlier with some billboards. It wasn't a HOWL sponsored billboard, but I designed. Maybe you've seen it. I think it's at the north end of Yellowstone and the south in Wyoming. There's a billboard that says, I think it's like grizzly bear recovery is a conservation success story.
Yeah, and I've seen that billboard.
Okay, so I designed that for whoever put it up, and that inspired apparently all these other billboards that I think some of the trapping organizations or whoever the ones that you mentioned earlier that they've been putting up, because it wasn't the typical billboard that would come from hunters. Because what I was presented with was, hey, do you have any ideas on this, on billboards? I said, well, what do you got?
This is funny.
And it was like a bunch of furs hanging and something like smoke a pack a day. I don't know. Something like that. And I'm like, okay, where are you putting
Very
this?
popular bumper sticker for a long time.
Right.
Yes.
Where exactly are you putting this? Well, the entrance to Yellowstone. I'm like, okay, who's coming in and out? Tourists, probably. People who don't hunt. I can't believe you're thinking this way. So let me work on it. Let's take the grizzly bear situation. Let's look at the success stories. It is a success story. Let's make it that. Let's challenge the public who's coming in. Let's challenge the anti-hunters with kind of their own rhetoric, and give the actual success story here. We have so many things and positive things that we can talk about that we've done in the last 100 years. That's the kind of stuff we need to market. That's the kind of stuff, that we need to get out there. And apparently that billboard really struck a nerve with the anti-hunting orgs, because they were like, shoot, we need to combat that a little bit, because that's not their usual strategy. Usually it's easy. Usually it's, some organization's got a, trailer going down the highway representing their organization. They got a picture of a wolf and a scope reticle over the wolf. I'm like, so that's your one chance to talk to the general public, and that's what they see, is just kill them all.
You're not winning any hearts and minds with that.
That's what we're putting out. Yeah, you're not winning anything. But it made me think of that when you brought that up, back to the optics thing and back to messaging, and where I think we should be as an industry, what we should be doing.
The question with grizzlies too, that's interesting, and how people position it, to say that it's hunters that want them off. People lose sight of the fact that who keeps trying to get them off is the federal agency that has managed them since the 70s.
Yeah.
The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service are the ones moving to remove them from the list.
Yeah.
They're getting, like, the federal management agency is getting blocked from doing what they think their job is to do, which is remove them from the list. You can leave the states out of that for a minute, because it's them saying,
could
it's
you
time.
imagine that job?
Yeah.
You got to do this, but I'm not going to give you any tools to do that with. It's like,
that's the thing that gets lost here. And it was the same thing with wolves. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service moved to remove wolves from the list. They initiate the conversation.
Yeah, I would love to get somebody on that we can talk about, like, accurate numbers of lethal removal. Because, like, when I went back and did the Idaho bear capture with Idaho Fish and Game, I think it was just prior to July 4th weekend, and at that point, Montana had killed 26 grizzly bears that year for, conflict mitigation, basically. Yeah. And, and typically Wyoming's twice what Montana is. And, Idaho is a handful. So, and that's what I see all the time, is like, well, if you delist, hunters are going to kill the bears. It's like, well, somebody's killing them right now.
Yeah.
Right.
And again, California is a great example of that with the mountain lions. You know the numbers, right?
And it doesn't mean, to your point, I asked that question to, all right, if grizzly bears are delisted, what's that mean? Maybe 20 hunting tags in Montana.
Well, the first year it was 0.
Okay.
The
Right.
first year it was 24 in Wyoming.
Okay.
1 in Idaho.
Which I was like, is like, I love it because it's like classic Wyoming.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's 24 in Wyoming. Idaho was doing a symbolic 1 just to exercise the right.
Sure.
which was only open to residents, and I got to apply for that tag.
Oh, nice.
In Montana, on the fishing
Didn't draw,
game,
Brody.
Nope.
the
No.
fishing game agency, Montana's fishing game agency, under Martha Williams at the time,
Mm-hmm.
decided to sit it out.
Didn't want to deal with the BS, probably.
That just they wanted to see. I mean, well, they wound up doing the smart thing. They
had a management plan.
I don't want to put it that way. Not the smart thing, but I mean, these other states are conducting tag draws.
Right. They went through they spent some money on that
Oh,
process.
they're like they were rolling, and so I don't want to. I wasn't involved in all the conversations, but I could picture both ways. I could picture an eagerness to exercise the right.
Mm-hmm.
I could also picture saying, I have a feeling about where this might go in the courts, and I'm not gonna go start printing tags and whatnot because I don't
Set
know
up a whole system
I
to
don't know
return people's money.
I don't know that this is going through. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
But
it
that
just,
brings up a good Wyoming point too, right? Because Wyoming's like, yep, we're gonna hunt grizzly bears. The 20 tags. And again, I in Idaho at the time, and I was already working with Idaho Fish and Game to a degree to figure out how to change the requirements for bear harvest in Idaho, because grizzly is such a political football. We're staring at Wyoming, where it's like you don't legally have to take anything other than the trophy parts. And we're like, well, if this isn't going to blow up in our face, then nothing will, right? And it's like that. It's another example of hunters probably following in line with some anti-hunters. It's just like, oh, I bet if you made them take the meat, they wouldn't want to do it, right?
That's one of the Maggie's still there. That's one of the things, Maggie, that I know American Bear Foundation and Wyoming Wildlife Federation is wanting to get pushed through in Wyoming. It's one of the few states that doesn't have wanton waste laws.
Idaho never. It's you don't have to take it in Idaho.
No, still not on black bear.
On bear, right?
Yep. Which was, when I was digging in the weeds on that, it was burdensome to the state to have to. You can just dispose of the carcass in the landfill for problem bears, or the state would also have to adhere to the same regulations. Was the way it was explained to me.
What?
Yeah, as a hunter harvest.
How can that be true? I mean,
Well, it got signed into law.
If you have
not regulation.
If a state has wanton waste laws on ducks and they got wanton waste laws on elk and they got wanton waste laws on deer and doves, it would just by a matter of logic extend it. They would have wanton waste laws on black bears.
Right.
Let me share with you. I want to share with you a quick quote. John Mack, the historian John Mack Farragher, who John Mack Farragher, a historian who was raised and partly educated in California, in describing the frontier of colonial America. You want to know what he said? He said, European settlers and Native Americans alike considered bear meat the prime game meat. Venison was inferior eating. So, I don't know why, if a state is going to go through the trouble of spelling out wanton waste laws, they wouldn't extend it to. Yeah. Why is that the exception?
Yeah.
Unless it's a bear, because some
is it-
squeamish people think it's icky.
Maybe the trichinosis thing.
Then they should have it. Then
I'm not condoning it.
You must
Right.
cook
I'm
it to
just-
165.
Yeah.
No,
that's what I was gonna say.
like your chicken and like your pork and like your bacon, you got to cook it.
Exactly. And
So-
bear is delicious. I was going to say, I think that's my favorite game to eat is black bear. I absolutely love it. And I don't know if it's because if it's It could be a combination.
Or are
of
you coming
just-
from a
Listen,
California
man, like-
perspective,
Oh,
where they're
yeah.
eating?
I am coming from
Nothing but
I am
acorn.
definitely coming from a
Acorns.
California perspective.
You don't got to
Yes.
convince us, but
Yeah.
like I went on a bear hunt in Idaho where there was a group of hunters and it was hound hunting, and I was the only one
Yeah.
that took that bear meat home.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah, but Buck Bowden just told you that
yeah,
it's an exception for one of his clients to take his moose meat
right.
home.
It's like a convenience thing. It's like, I don't want to be bothered with it, which is
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
I
to
had a
me.
friend that went on a bear hunt in Canada, and they were so flabbergasted that he wanted to bring his bear home from the bear hunt. They tried to convince him that he couldn't.
the meat.
They did
you
that to
mean.
me in Quebec.
Yeah.
He had to be like, "What do
I
you mean
found
I
out
can't?"
after
Oh,
the
you just
fact.
can't because of this,
Yeah.
that, and the other thing. So he started making some calls around, and he's like, "Listen, I can, and I'm gonna."
Yeah.
Had to fight with him about it.
I left 2 bears in Quebec, and this is like 20 years ago now. And that guy's like, "No, you can't take them."
Yeah.
He's like, they're riddled with worms. And
Oh no,
this
they were
and-
giving him like a regulation thing, the border.
Yeah. Well,
And he did all of his own homework.
I was gonna fly it back because I flew there. I mean, I didn't drive. I was living in Arizona, Quebec's, But
Hmm.
yeah, they wouldn't let me take it back. And then I found out afterwards when I got back that it was BS that I had to, I could
Yeah.
have just brought it to a meat processor, maybe got it frozen and shipped or whatever.
Yeah.
I
If
didn't
people
even, actually
wanna-
didn't even get my hides.
Never got him.
Yeah, it was weird.
If people want to debate the merits of salvage requirements, debate the merits of salvage requirements. But if you're going to apply salvage requirements to game animals, I mean, it just seems like it
Yep.
just apply.
Should
If
be
you
on
want,
every-
you could, like I know what side I would argue on, but if you want to debate, like, can the government tell you to remove certain stuff from the woods? Alaska uses salvage requirements in a way that almost like guides activities.
Mm-hmm.
They have areas where they're like, you have to bring the moose ribs out on the rack. I think they even had an area where you needed to remove the liver. They got areas where certain permits, if you kill a moose, you got to cut its antler in half. Muskox, you got to destroy its trophy value if you're going to hunt the area. So they're, and this is not a softy state, I'll point out.
No.
They're guiding, they're directly saying, here's who we want. These are the
Right.
people we're looking for. If you're going to hunt moose in this area, you're going to be the kind of guy that's going to bring the ribs out on the bone. Or you're going to be the kind of guy that's willing to cut that antler in half and then bring it out. Because it's, they're
Because they want to see you pack out an extra couple hundred pounds.
they're sort of playing I don't put it gently. I mean, they're playing favorites with certain user groups.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Can you glue those antlers back together?
No, for sure you can. But like the state of Montana, 2 years ago, they changed the regulations to where you don't have to keep your duck legs.
Yep.
And I'm like, I'm the type of person where I'm like, if you don't know how to cook a duck leg and eat it, you shouldn't be hunting ducks.
Sure.
Pretend you're game regulation. Guys, tell us how people can find out about HOWL and read the what you guys get involved in.
howlforwildlife.org. Social media, we basically do everything on Instagram. It's just the path we chose. That's howl_org. And you can sign up for free alerts. So when we do have actions, you get those emails. Those emails are very detailed. We work with a lot of state partners. We call them conservation partners. But basically to get on the right track with everything, it's not us in-house saying we should do this, we should write it up this way. We're very, very reliant on who we consider the experts. So when you get that information, it's probably going to be the best info you find on that issue. On, here it is broken down, and then here's how you get involved.
And you guys covered. Explain to people what your sort of jurisdiction is around the country. Like, what states do you follow the issues in?
Everything.
Okay.
It depends on how much time. We're very small.
Yep.
It depends on how much time we have. How much time we have to act on the issue. Sometimes it'll come up and we got to do something in 5 days. It's really for how
It's whether or not we can affect change on it too.
Yeah, and our system is kind of complex, so it takes some time to build that. But we meet, with our group with Everett Everett Headley, he's a part of HOWL, and Mike Costello, who's a part of HOWL, and then it's John and myself, and we have a few writers besides that. That's it. So we're heavily reliant on those partners. We decide, is this a good thing for us to get involved in? Will it be effective? Does the bill have legs? There's that too, because I don't want to waste people's time. There's thousands of bills.
Yeah.
So,
you mean things that are just gestures?
Yeah, there's so many of those.
Yeah, we just had one the other day. You actually told me yesterday that
it was over.
There was on my cake. Take a look at this because we had one of our partners reached out. He's like, "Hey, can you look into us?"
A lot of people reach out like from all over the world, really, actually.
Yeah.
Hey, can you help us with this? Can you help us with that? So trying to kind of boil that down and see what's really important, balance it with our time and, what can be impactful. That's definitely a challenge. But again, we really rely on our partners.
And you guys will often send your audience outside of HOWL to where they need, where like you'll alert them and send them to other partners who are positioned to take on that.
Perfect example. Probably the largest example is CRWM, Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management. You've had Dan on here. You know what's going on there. We recognize that they are spearheading that issue in Colorado. They are set up to campaign against it. They are set up to fight it legally, everything. They are a C4. So in recognizing that, we have made that a national issue. I talked to Dan in October or September. They didn't have Instagram. I don't think he'd ever been on a podcast before.
Mm-hmm.
He was going to need a lot of help. Where we came in was, all right, we're going to tell everybody about you and make this a national issue. And through all the people John knows and the few people I know and whatnot, we reached out to.
I think he's been on 75 podcasts now.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was through Giannis is what eventually brought him here. But yeah, we are willing to promote other organizations we certainly tell people who want to donate to us because they don't know any better. They're like, oh, we should donate to you for this Colorado thing. I'm like, no, we can't do anything there. But who you should donate to
we should talk about
these
that.
guys.
Why? Because there's a misconception out there. And I think that number actually gets misconstrued a lot. Like, oh, I don't want to, donate to so-and-so because they can use 80% of the money towards salaries and blah, 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 blah. But the actual number is only 20% of your expenditure as a 501c3 could be used towards lobbying. And so everything else has to be either educational or administrative or working on projects and so on and so forth. So people take that number and they misconstrue it. So we recognized in that situation that Charles was just giving you that, okay, if $100,000 came to us, then we can only spend $20,000 doing it. It's money that not well spent, right? Yes, we could have did a lot of educational things to make it work, but it's the person that's going to be the most effective. We want to win.
Yeah.
That's what we want. We want to win.
Yeah. There are rules. Basically, there's rules to 501c3s, but overall, I think, as organizationally, the 501c3s, the C4s, the national brands, the state, the national organizations, the state organizations, they tend to, it's competitive. It's a little bit competitive. And if one of those orgs kind of takes on an issue, it's hard to get the other orgs to support these guys over here who are leading that charge.
Mm-hmm.
But for the results that we want, we should all
jump on board.
Yeah. Right. Because we want to win this thing.
Right.
I don't care who's leading the fight or whatever.
We don't need the recognition for it. Like, okay, who cares if it's this org or that org that was leading the fight? As long as everybody aligns with the same messaging and the same purpose, let's get there.
Yeah.
Let's make a difference.
We'd like to actually, people ask us what our mission is or whatnot. I actually want to go out of business, which would be, 30 years from now, we have enough public support to make the anti-hunting argument irrelevant. And I really do think that can be done through the right channels. We touched on it earlier, but that can be done. But that's our goal, to actually go out of business.
Yeah.
So, because I would much rather go hunting and spend time doing the things I like to do instead of instead of this full-time job, which has been basically the last 3 years since we kind of started working on it.
Or when you go hunting now, what you think about are the issues, not the fun stuff.
It's
I was telling him the other day. I mean, that's my best hunting buddy right there. We hunted all over the country together.
Yeah.
Now when we get together, we talk about HOWL stuff.
We hunt.
Instead of talking about, oh, did you see that elk over there? And you know, how should we approach it? You know,
and we hunt once a year now since we started. That's
about
I know.
It. That's amazing.
Yeah. So it takes a lot of time, but anyway.
Together once a year, we still hunt a lot.
Yeah. Together. Yeah.
I gotta give you guys a plug, right? Steve, you've heard of MeatEater experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Right. So Cypress Cove, Louisiana, we're gonna be down there hosting, fishing, doing a bunch of super fun stuff. A bunch of us, and Howl for Wildlife is going to be donating to a spot for 2 people to Cypress Cove with the MeatEater crew.
Oh, sweet.
All you got to do is go over to howlforwildlife.org and get a membership.
Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll be entered to win the trip for 2 to Cypress Cove with everybody here at MeatEater. Now, if you want to skip that line or the random draw, you can go to themeateater.com/experiences.
Read all about it.
And use the code HOWL-500-donation. And when you buy your spot to Cypress Cove, $500 goes back to howlforwildlife.org.
Oh, what do they put in?
HOWL-500-donation.
Got it. Thank you, Cal. And thank you, guys.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming on the show. And we'll wait a couple months and the whole landscape will change. You can come back on and talk about it again.
Yep.
You'll be like, we won. All right, guys. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you.
As they looked out from Pompey's pillar, such abundance and beauty they saw. But when they looked a century later, that valley was empty and the animals were gone. And now they looked at one another. They said, what'll we do now? Well, our livelihood is ending, but I'll be damned if that's the last one that I saw. I said, our wildlife must be maintained for our lifestyle to still remain. Conservation is calling me. Yeah, this wildlife is worth living. No more harvest for the market, owned by the people, all the wild things in time, held in trust by all the agencies, to be managed but not confined by state lines. And later Aldo sensed the problem. After the war was fought and was won, folks thought food came from the grocery. No, he comes from chopping and the salmon need to run. I said, our wildlife must be maintained for our lifestyle to still remain. Conservation is calling me. Yeah, this wildlife is worth living.
wildlife is a citizen-owned, renewable resource held in trust by an agency that assesses and allocates the resource in a democratic fashion with an eye toward people utilizing it but not damaging it in the long term.
Our wildlife must be maintained, yeah, for our lifestyles to still remain. Conservation is calling me. Yeah, this wildlife is worth living. Conservation is calling me. Yeah, this wildlife is worth living.